They thought you were an alcoholic or something.
Dude, when I went down there, you know those little poncho vest things you'll see?
Mm-hmm.
Like in classic Hispanic stuff or whatever?
Yeah.
My buddy got me one of those. So when I sent them my photo, I was wearing that. I probably shouldn't have been. Because they were like, dude, you got here and we thought you were a drug dealer for sure. And I was like, what? And they're like, well, you're wearing the drug dealer jacket.
He's got like 3 pounds in his bag.
I saw you standing there the first time that I laid my eyes on you. I couldn't get you out of all the thoughts I had. And now the end is near, and I just couldn't seem to get it right. I guess it's time to go.
Boom, we're back for another episode of the Close Boys podcast. We are joined today by Lloyd Sinclair. Lloyd, how are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing well. Gabe, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm chilling. I'm excited for this one.
Hell yeah, man. We've been stuck for this one for a while.
Mm-hmm.
When we first started, like, you were on our list. Like,
Yeah.
telling people, like, you were on our list. We had, like, an extensive list of who we wanted on here as guests.
That's funny.
We pitched the idea to you before you left. You just want to talk about, you just got back from Alaska.
Yeah. Yeah, for the past couple of summers, I've gone up there. And I also listened to one of your podcasts before about like college and all that shit. So right when I graduated college, I went to Alaska to work on some friends' tenders where you like go out and pick up fish from the fishermen and bring it back to the cannery as a way to like make money right when I graduated.
Yeah.
And it was a little brutal, to be honest. It's like 3 months of sitting on a boat. You just like drive around, go get the fish, bring it back. You don't get to go to town that much, like depending on the boat you're working on.
Damn.
And so more recently though, I, because this is all through a crowd through Elk. Like I'm from Elk originally.
Yeah.
The guy who owns the boat's from Elk. My buddy who's a little bit younger than me, like late 20s, he is the captain of the boat. So I'm sort of working with a friend of mine in the past couple of years. I was like, look, can I just do like half a summer, like a couple of weeks? And so the past 3 years, I've got to go up for like 6 weeks or so and just, take pictures. And we saw orcas and whales. And,
Really?
Oh, man.
Like close to the boat?
Yeah, probably 20 yards, 30 yards.
Jeez.
Dude, that's close.
But like last couple of years, we saw like 1, 2. And then this year they were like, man, did you see the big pod? And we're like, no, what do you mean? And we wake up at like, we had to leave. We leave this little harbor place at like 10 o'clock. It's still daylight out, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like driving to about to do night watches. And then there's like 50 of them, like straight up, like everywhere, all around us. And it was like, whoa. And they woke me up and they're like, come look at this. It was nuts. I was like,
insane.
this is why I come up here.
Yeah.
But it was cool. It's one of those experiences where you really, you feel like you're getting a lot out of it, but it's difficult. And then by the end, you're like, oh, I'm going back next year. Like,
it was worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Every year. And it's always a drain too. So by the end of it, you're like, God, what do I just do? I don't know. This year, there wasn't that much fish. So we sort of just sat around a lot because you receive fish from the trollers. That's what we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
The trollers will come to our boat, drop their fish off, and then they go back to fishing because it's like a 10 or 12 hour drive back to town.
Yeah.
Like through these little inlets. And
What are
stuff.
trollers exactly? Could you like...
we have them in Noyo Harbor here. It's just the salmon trollers that put out like deep lines, and they're going for king salmon and coho salmon, and they trolling for fish. You go super slow. They go like 3 miles an hour, 2 knots. Pretty slow, and they just hook them and bring them on. So if they're having a good day, they'll catch. If it's kings, it could be 150, 150 a day.
Damn.
And this year it was like 12, 15,
12?
30.
Holy crap, that's a big difference.
So the trollers come and drop the fish off at your boat?
Yeah.
So it's like you're just collecting the fish.
Yeah, and then we drive them back. So mainly my job, because my buddy and his girlfriend are, really good at this, what they're doing. This is Alex and Kyle Norton from Fort Bragg. You guys might know Kyle.
Maybe.
They are legit at what they're doing. So I just go pack a bunch of fish and come back. I did a bunch of rock fishing this year because we had downtime. I'm just like fishing for cods and stuff.
Nice.
Yeah.
It was great.
What part of Alaska is that?
It's in Sitka, like off of Canada. It's it's like Southeast Alaska technically.
Southeast.
They all call it Southeast, yeah.
I want to visit Alaska before I die.
Before you die? Okay.
On the bucket list. I feel like it's super sick over there.
I think so too. So you're on the boat for most of the time then? Like most of the day? You wake up at 10 and...
You're on the boat all the time. You sleep on the boat.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You don't get seasick or anything like that?
I do. And so for example, though, this last year I went crab fishing out of San Francisco, which was nuts.
Nice.
And I kept getting seasick. And again, my buddy Alex from Elk, who we've all worked together a bunch, he's like, man, you should try seasickness pills. I just tried them because like I was getting seasick for like 10 hours at a time, and working. We're like moving 120-pound pots, like puking and shit.
Holy crap.
Why would you do that then? Why would you put yourself through that if you know you get seasick?
For 3 months?
Well, I mean, because typically you ride it out, like working on the Jenny C, which is Alex's boat in Alaska. I would get sick for the first 2-3 trips. And then I would start phasing off. And by the end of the season, I was okay.
You're used to it.
Yeah. And my first year I went up, I remember getting a little sick, but after 3 months, like you're just comfortable. And so what happened this year with crabbing, the hard part is if you leave the boat, to be honest. Like, let's say you're out smashing around out in the ocean a lot, you'll get real comfortable and then you'll adjust. But if you come back, like with Alex's gig, we go on like a 10-mile trip or 10-hour trip north, 6 hours is real choppy or whatever, and you'll get sick. But then you're just sitting in this little inlet that's like basically like a Noyo Harbor type of thing. Like it's like calm in there for like 4 or 5 days, receiving boats. You pack the fish, and then you lose your tolerance to seasickness. Like it comes and goes like that. And like with crabbing this year, if we did like day 1, I'd be horrible sick. Day 2, you'd be okay. If we did 3 or 4 days in a row, I'd be cool. And then, but so the second half of the season, I started eating those little bromine or something seasickness pills. Night and day, dude.
Really?
Oh man, I'm like going back to work this year. It's like, oh, that was great. Let's work some more.
That's
like
awesome,
totally
man.
changes your reality.
Yeah. What do you eat while you're on there? Did you just eat the fish, or like do you guys eat
Raw
food? Like, well, I'm assuming they have a stove or something.
It really depends on the boat. But with Alex and Kyle, they have a great cooking scene. I mean, Alex's parents were great cooks growing up, and I'm assuming Kyle's parents were pretty good too. But we're eating a lot of, I mean, it's hard to say, it's just not good food. They're like making burgers every night and sort of extravagant tuna lunches. And we get whatever we want because on that boat in particular, the boat pays for the food. So you'll go get some bomb cheese and you'll get whatever you want, really.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is they're good cooks. So a lot of good fresh fish.
Take care of you.
They carry you. I just have to do the dishes.
Nice.
That's awesome. So now you're back, and what's your plan? What are you doing now? Or what were you doing before you left?
Before I left was crab season still. And then it shut down because of coronavirus. And I was sort of in stall mode for about a month or 2. And then the crab captain wanted to open up, and we went off of USAL, man. Like one of my like life dreams has always been to see like the whole Lost Coast from the ocean. And we went and dumped a bunch of pots off there. We did like 200 pots. And it was so weird because I was like dropping all the pots, and you don't get paid unless you're picking them out of the water. You know, you only get paid when you pull the crab out. So like I was dumping them, and I'm like going to Alaska the next day or 2 days later. So I'm not even getting paid. I'm just like there helping.
Oh, damn.
And I remember being so bummed. We worked like a 16-hour day, and it actually was really nice, but I was getting a little just funky. And then like the USAL coast at sunset, it was like, oh, this is all worth it. Like I can't even explain how cool that was. Like there's just no lights too. This is a whole pandemic conversation I want to be had with everybody too, is like with the fires last year. You guys remember the fires last year and how there's no lights for a couple days?
Yeah.
It was so much more aesthetically pleasing. Like I drove through the Point Arena area when there was no lights. It was like, wow, this is a beautiful sunset. Like there's no light pollution coming from some little restaurant. There's no nothing. And the USAL coast is like that. There's nobody up there. So like I remember watching the sunset. This is like a couple months ago, and it was just like, wow, this is like stunning with no like lighthouse flashing in your face or nothing.
You watching it from the boat?
Yeah.
Where's USAL? Where's that?
Oh, USAL's just north of here. It's like the Lost Coast, like north of Fort Bragg, north of Westport.
Okay.
But you know where the road turns into Leggett to go like up towards Humboldt, that whole area?
I'm not really familiar with it.
That's more north of Westport.
Like where it forks? It forks right and left?
Well, yeah, but really it just forks right, because then it goes inland, and then there's like a whole section almost up to Ferndale towards Eureka where there's no road on the coast.
Gotcha.
That's why it's called the Lost Coast, and there's almost nothing there. And if you go there though, it's crazy. Like there's like a super steep, like a couple 100 feet cliff just like straight into the water. Like you don't see that often in all my travels.
Yeah.
And there's nobody on it. Like there's no lights, there's no cars. You're just like, wow, this is like pristine nature, you know?
Yeah.
And you don't see it that much. Like even in Alaska, which you see it a lot more, you'll still see like a light up there, or you'll see like a little antenna with like a blinking, cell phone tower or something.
Yeah.
And I don't know, in all my travel, especially in Alaska, I've always been on the kick of like, when do I see no human anything?
Yeah.
And it's not that common. Like it's sadly not that common.
Yeah, it's relaxing when you can just kind of just be out there in nature and just
man.
everything's quiet and you can just kind of take it all in.
Yeah, and I mean, I grew up. So part of this thing, I know you guys talk about people's childhood and stuff, and part of mine was, grow up in Elk, there wasn't that many people.
Mm-hmm.
Like I grew up in a really secluded childhood where, I had a lot of spare time, and if my siblings weren't thrashing around, or like my 2 neighbors. Like I only had like 3 neighbors.
Yeah, I was gonna say, for someone who's never been to Elk or doesn't know where that is, like how many people live in Elk, would you say?
So Elk's a town of 300 people, like just a couple hours north of San Francisco, a little bit south of Fort Bragg.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very just slow moving place, like in so many ways. And technically I was born here in Mendocino. I was born behind Harvest Market because there was like a birthing center there for a minute.
Oh, what?
Yeah. I was actually working for a moving business. My uncle had a moving business, and we moved the building, and we go in there like, I was born in here. And I get in there and there's a baby scale, and it's still there. And it was Tanya Hard's birthing center for only like a couple months. But the baby scale got left there. And I was like, I was weighed on that damn scale.
That's so weird. You should have kept it. You stole
it. Framed it.
Yeah, put it right here on the side.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, but that's been a sort of a weird theme in my life, though, of like, where is like a natural interaction? I gotta stop hitting that mic. Where is like a natural interaction between, you and nature, or, even other people? Like, where do we get to interact without distractions? This podcast is one of them. Where do we get to talk where it's like, there's not some crazy person coming in to like offer something or anything, like you don't get that many moments where it's just like a calm down anything, especially with so many people these days.
Yeah.
And so how was life growing up in Elk? You said you had 2 brothers, or?
I have a brother and a sister. And then when I was 10, my dad passed away and my mom remarried, and I have 2 half siblings.
Okay.
And we're all real close, but there's a gap in age there where my siblings are like 10 and whatever. No, it's at 11 and 13 years younger or something. My 2 younger siblings. Yeah, so they're a bit younger.
Was that weird? Where they got remarried and
she got me remarried real quick after my dad passed away, and that was a little strange. But when you look back on it, you see like the stability that everybody brings you. I see what my stepdad brought to my mom, and I see what my younger siblings brought to me. You don't always acknowledge like what these little creatures do.
Yeah.
But like my brother, when he was 2 years old, was like this total catalyst in our whole family and our whole little town. Like it's only 300 people. So when like 2 children are born, everybody's like, oh, they had a kid.
Yeah.
And
everybody knows
them. And, and it's become a theme in my life in general of that, you guys are from here as well. And a lot of people know you in Fort Bragg, where it's like, if everybody knows you, you get these natural interactions that are very, I don't want to say easy, but like they're built for you. Like the Alaska one's the best one in my life right now, is that I didn't grow up thinking I was going to be a fisherman or nothing like that. Like my brother's way more into it than me. But Robbie, who knew my dad really well and knew Alex's dad really well, we're all, Elk's only 300 people. And, he pretty much had this job like waiting for me. Like even if I didn't want to do it, it was like, hey, we're going to need young guys to come move fish around. Like, you want to get paid pretty good? And it's like, yeah, and then that led into the crabbing thing. And, and now I'm at this moment in life of like, one of my realizations is, what do I represent to all the younger kids? Cause I'm 34 now. And, Robbie started these boats when he was in his 30s, and not like I need to own a boat, but how do we pass these like structures of information around? Like,
totally.
Like, you guys want to go to Alaska? Like, I'm not your guy, but I know the guy, and it's all small town stuff in a way that's like, you have to acknowledge it, that it's even there helping you sometimes because it is here.
Totally. It's a good point. And I know you've been a substitute teacher here and there too. So that's another way to give back. Like, you want to talk about that, how you got into subbing and.
Yeah, sure. I mean, all on a similar theme though. When I was a kid, my mom, my whole life told me I was going to be the high school PE teacher and coach soccer at Mendo.
Oh, really?
So I was like, man, like, am I really doing this?
Why'd you tell you that?
Because it was like the good thing to do. It was
give
like
back to the community.
Yeah, and like, you're such a soccer player, and all these kids will learn so much from you. And like, once I did it, I was like, because I coached Fort Bragg first.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I coached Fort Bragg.
The high school,
right when Danny Aragon stopped. So I did 1 year at Fort Bragg with Angel Mendoza and that crowd, and
oh really? I feel
Clemente.
like I remember that.
Yeah, man, we almost won the league.
That was a year that they didn't win it. That was a year that, because that was a year after us.
But you guys graduated like 10 seniors.
Yeah, but still.
Oh man,
that core group. I think what was Angel, Clemente, Rain,
Brendan.
Rain didn't play though with me. But when I coached, I had 3 seniors and 3 juniors.
Oh really?
Yeah,
That's tough.
Damn.
That makes sense. We still had a good team though. I was bummed. Like we sort of lost the league on a couple coaching errors almost.
Oh yeah. Really?
Well. Yeah, I mean, I didn't know how they were keeping score in the league for half the season because I was like, look, wins are wins. Let's play right. Like, I'm not even going to ask how, like, because it turns out you get 2 points for a win, 1 point for a tie. And at one point, we played Calistoga. No, who was it? Yeah, Calistoga. And all we needed was a tie to, like, pretty much stay head for the lead. And I didn't know that. And I was like, oh, we got to win this game. And I would have coached it differently. But again, like, it's like rookie coaching mistakes. And
wait, did you get a win?
No, we lost, man. We
pushed too many people forward, and
yeah, they played on a football field that was really skinny and long, and it was like we should have just played boot ball. Like we should have put Angel and Brandon up top and just kicked them the ball. Instead, we tried to play through the midfield, and they scored a goal in the last like 5 minutes, and we lost the game.
Heartbreaker.
It wasn't fun, but at the same note, it's like it's one of those things where you like I coached Mendo for 4 years after that, and you start realizing you have these little like tendencies as a person that you end up implementing on your team that are like, I personally don't care about the score. I don't care about standings. Like I never have, in all my years of playing in the Mexican League, never checked it. Cause it's just like, no, you go play every game and you go play to win. And it's like, as a coach, so you gotta be like, we could tie this game. It would really help.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I didn't think like that ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've always been the same way. I've always wanted to win any game, no matter what it took. And I think I mentioned earlier that's something when I was trying to coach the middle school for a minute before the COVID stopped everything. And I came in with the mindset where I was like, I'm going to win. Yeah. We're going to kill everybody. We're just going to tear these kids. We're going to make them never want to play again. Like I was such a
quite work.
Yeah. And I was like, you know what? I probably shouldn't be doing that. Like these kids, like they just want to have fun.
And in Mendo, coaching Mendo is a different experience than Fort Bragg because Mendo, it's even more to like have fun, which I don't know if I agree with that in a lot of ways because if the team wins, they go back to school and there's like school pride involved and, kids come back like, oh, we won yesterday. We beat Fort Bragg. And then they're happy, and if you go into a game, you're like, win or lose and you lose, like they're not as happy. Like, winning matters. And I ran into that a lot in Mendo because there's such a mentality of just like, hey, this is for our kids to learn the game and for you to teach them how to run better and be hard workers. And it's like, yeah, but if we go 0-15,
no one wants that.
No, we won't even have a team next year. Yeah. Like, there's a line in there that's appropriate.
And so how were your seasons in Mendo? Were you guys successful? Was it tough? Good.
The problem in Mendo though was we were in like the lowest of the lowest divisions. And which made sense because the first year I did it, there was no team and we did only scrimmages because you got to prove to the league that you can have a team. Like, look, you have enough kids, blah, blah, blah. So we scrimmaged like AV and a couple other schools and we lost them all. We won our last game actually. So we went up 1-4. And then the next 2 years though, we were in like the low league with like Laytonville and, some of the small schools. And we pretty much dominated it. The year before that, we actually were in a league with some Santa Rosa teams. And it turns out they jumped up a league. But it ended up being this sort of mess of like, we're in too low of a league and these kids don't want to take it seriously anymore. Because like when you go 12-0 and there's only like one competitive game and then you lose in playoffs, they're like, wow, we weren't ready for playoffs. And it's like, no, like all your league games weren't worth much.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing about small schools is that a lot of times it's so inconsistent with like the competition you're playing. It's like you say, you can go 12-0 and you're playing these little chump schools, and then you play a school like Anderson Valley that
they're good,
good, and then you get like smacked,
Oh man, even this year we got bumped up this last year where Andrew was coaching the team more or less and I was helping him. We got bumped up a league, and then what happened? We get bumped up a league and we had a great season. Everything went well. We got 3rd or 4th in the league, which is appropriate. And then we were in the small schools playoffs, which was cool. We did well. We won 2 games, I think. And then we played AV in the final and it was classic. We played in AV. We ended up losing 2-1, but it was a classic moment of like, we lost on a free kick at the end of the game because our wall wasn't tight. And it went through the wall and the goalie like hit a gopher hole, like the horrible goalie. Wasn't even a blunder, just hit a gopher hole, funky field. But it was like, all right, kids, like the AV boys practice that. Like they know how to make a wall.
Yeah.
You know, and that was the difference in the game in the end was like, then they wouldn't make a wall in practice. Like, you know, because like, why do it? Like, I don't want to get hit with a ball.
Yeah.
It's
no
like,
one wants that.
Yeah, I mean, that's very true. Practicing set pieces is the details, you know?
The details.
Details.
Are you still coaching or?
I mean, to be honest, the Corona thing's happening this year and I'm out of the loop. I was out of the loop anyways, but now I'm a little more happy out of the loop. I'm like, oh, like I couldn't even do it if I wanted to.
Yeah.
But no, I have to move on to some other things right now. It's a weird experience though, not coaching. Like stopping coaching Fort Bragg was like one of my biggest regrets in a lot of ways. Because I just believe there's a lot of dedicated people that are into sports there. And, you know, if people are dedicated to something and you have something to teach them, like you're sort of doing a disservice not doing it. I mean, I did coach Mendo right after that, but you know what I'm saying? It was just a feeling of like, wow, how am I not helping these kids do this?
Yeah.
So
I think that's cool that I honestly didn't even know that you were coaching at Fort Bragg or that you coached there.
No, I was just one year.
I think it's really cool because you have that experience of collegiate soccer.
Yeah.
You know, like a lot of the coaches there have never played that higher competitive soccer, you know?
Yeah.
Did you take anything from your experience in college and kind of apply it there? Or what was like your coaching style like?
You know, the big one that I had to take is I played at Humboldt my freshman year and my senior year. And both years I walked on and they're totally different experiences. Like one year the coach wanted me there and the other year was my freshman year where he sort of just like let me walk on. And I learned a lot though about, you know, in the collegiate side though, I learned a lot about how they recruit and what recruiting means to coaches and how they get paid. Like they get paid for how good of players they recruit. So if you just show up walking on, like they don't really care if you make it or not. Right. You know, if you leave, it's probably even better for their, you know, pocketbook. Because now they can go recruit another player. And so I learned a lot about that. You know, I've learned a lot about like all through my high school years, I was pretty much like, you know, started every game and you know.
Where'd you play high school?
In Mendo.
In Mendo?
Yeah. But when you're playing off the bench though, you just learn so much more. Like there's a weird human dynamic of how do you play half a game and play hard? How do you treat a player as a coach that you know he's only going to play half the game? Yeah. Or he's not going to play at all. Like if you've never experienced going to another city and not playing, you know, it's hard to talk to a kid about that. Be like, hey, you did great over there on the bench.
Yeah. It humbles you.
Yeah, like I've done that. I've gone on road trips and not played. Like we went to Stanislaus my freshman year and I didn't play. And I was like, I'm just like sitting here. Like it's 100 degrees and I'm just sitting here.
It's really hot over there. Yeah, man, you have like this inner conflict or you kind of have this like conversation with yourself. Like, is this even worth it?
Definitely.
Like, do I want to do this? Like I have way more to offer.
You know? My coach, my senior year of college was like, man, you should have stuck it out. You were hella good. Like, why'd you quit? And I was like, well, the other coach didn't get me either. Like,
that's another thing too.
He didn't see my style of play. You know, that's a big one. Like if anybody really wants to go play college sports, I always tell people, find the team that wants you. Like if you're on a team where you're like, look, push me through, like I'll make it. I'm that good. Like they literally built a system not around you. You know what I mean? Like, I remember talking to Udi because he's one of our mutual friends who played at San Jose State. He told me he did his 3 years, started all 3 years, I think, right? Yeah. And then his senior year, the coach switched, said he wanted him, like, you got to come back. And then he had a different style of play he wanted to play that didn't include Udi. And it's like, bro, you should have left. Like, you should have gone to a different school. You should have gone pro. You should have done anything but stick around with that coach who wasn't going to use you. Yeah. Like, you can't predict that, but like, it has to be thought about a little bit like that because it was a huge part of my year because my senior year I showed up and it was a new coach. He showed up super late because the coach that like I had originally left like right before the season. So they just like hit the phone and they found this guy, CJ Johnson, who was a real nice guy to me. And I sent him an email, I think like season had already even started maybe. And I was like, look, I want to, you know, I played for you in the past. I played for Humboldt in the past. Like, this is my super senior year. I got like 4 classes. Like, could I come play? And he wrote an email back. He's like, yeah, I know who you are. You don't even have to try out. Just come play. And I was like, what? And it turns out his assistant coaches knew me. They were all like, no, that kid should have never quit in the first place. But
why did you quit?
I had super bad shin splints, so I could like barely run. And the coach was still running me every day with everybody. And I was like, dude, like this is just getting worse and worse. And he wasn't playing me. Like, so it was really the beginning of my sophomore year I quit. So I redshirted my whole freshman year, sophomore year. And I played in a game or two, but he just recruited a bunch more kids and I just wasn't in the scene. Like, I was like such the black sheep on that team in a lot of ways. I still am. Like if I see those guys now, like we're all homies, but I still feel like the black sheep of like the sort of redneck hippie kid who like didn't grow up, like a big one I got asked a lot was how I got good. I got asked that by both times.
You get good.
What would you tell them?
I mean, I wonder that
Mexican
too.
League.
Mexican League? Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, so again, like it's really interesting now to see the structure of how sports are built. Cause like my sister went through the whole Santa Rosa United program. And it really helped her. She went to UC Santa Cruz, played all 4 years, started all 4 years, I think. Damn. She was like I forget what, she got some honors, like state, whatever, like some acknowledgements. Yeah. Either way though, they wanted her to play there and they were looking forward to her coming playing there, And I think it just drastically changes how you like look at your college experience when that's what you're asked to do. I forgot what you asked originally, but
I said what made you stand out, or what?
And then you said that you felt like the black sheep. Yeah. How'd you get good? How did you get good? You said Mexican League.
Oh yeah, Mexican.
Well, so when I was a kid though, my sister played in the Santa Rosa Soccer League, and my mom. This is like a whole little backstory on my mom. Really, she lived in Guadalajara for 1.5 years when she was younger, almost 2 years, when she was like 14 or 15, 16. And because her dad was a writer for the LA Times and he needed a break, so they like sent him there. And my mom like,
whoa.
Or her dad was.
Did you know?
My grandpa?
Yeah, like were you?
Yeah, he died when I was younger. But yeah. I mean, I knew him. Yeah,
he wrote for the LA Times.
Yeah, he like covered one of the presidential campaigns and
what? That's awesome.
Cool.
Yeah. So now that I've gotten in, it's really interesting to me to like hear these different stories. Like I listen to a lot of podcasts now of like, how did you feel motivated to do something? And for me, I'm more and more into writing, and I've been writing a book forever. And I started writing for the AVA a little bit, little articles I sent them. And part of me was like, what has your family done before? You know what I mean? Like we all think that, like, what are our role models? And, my grandpa was always in the back of my mind of like, well, that's what he did for work.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not making money writing right now, but it's still a moment of like, my family has succeeded at this in the past. Like
you got it in you.
Yeah. I mean, not to say like my siblings wouldn't, like we're all the same, but, and I think we all have everything in us. Like my personal opinion is we could all be musicians. We could all be whatever, but it's whether it's reinforced in your group, if you could call it that. And back to the same story though, why the Mexican League was such a big thing in my life was my mom grew up in Oaxaca for a couple of years. And her dad actually left after like 9 months. Her whole family did. And she asked to stay with the maid for another like 9 months. So she like lived with the Guadalajara family and like went to church with them. And we had this cool picture. She was like a parade queen and shit like that. So we have this picture of my mom in a big like convertible with some guy and waving to the crowd. And she's like 16, like classic Sweet 16 Mexico stuff. But awesome. Like super blonde lady.
Yeah.
And then, but when Franny, so I know Franny and David because we all played a travel league together, and they played in the Mexican League with their dad, with Pancho and those guys. And when I turned 16, like it's like my sophomore year of high school, they were like, "Oh, you got to come play with us," and I was like, "You got to be kidding me!" And there's 1 or 2 other guys from Fort Bragg who did it. Chris Charters did it for a minute, and Harrison did it. So I was like, "Okay, I could do this." But the Mexican League, when you were 16, was intimidating.
I was going to say, yeah. A bunch of old big guys. And
especially as like some white kid who didn't understand the language. And you know what I mean? Like I was like not my world. But it was in a lot of ways because like my mom would come and she spoke Spanish and she would talk to my coaches and be like, hey, like be nice to my kid. And she really pushed me speaking Spanish. And it was a great experience. Like, I still have great friends from that. And it's a big part of my life still. I ended up playing in the Mexican League for 15 years,
Yeah.
And, but it was interesting to see though, once I hit college was like the type of soccer I learned was way different. It was much more sporadic and like way more, I want to say way more creative, but like that ended up being my role in college was like, damn, we need some creativity. Like, cause I knew how to like just make something up because that's the style of the league. Like there isn't like a strategy always, it's like, hey, just go get creative and see if you score a goal. And like, it's a style that's not taught really.
Yeah. I was just about to add to that. Like Just kind of like talking about your style. Like you're the type of player, like you play the mid. Sure. For those that don't know, and you're the type of player that me as a defender, as a center back, like a lot of the times we look to the midfielder, the 6, to get us out.
Sure.
You know, like and then
get them out of trouble. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're the type of player that we can like play you the ball, and you're like reliable to where you can get us out. And then as an attacker, you're the player that would find their feet.
Sure.
You know, like you set up a goal.
Yeah.
You know, and that's like you said, it's not something that can be taught. And adding to that, like I remember when I was in San Bernardino, you would see the players that would have, I would explain it that way, the Mexican style. Yeah. It's like it's a different style than the club scene or
it's free.
Like
it's more free flow.
Yes, it's free flow. And it, like you say, it's a lot. I just don't know how to explain it, but like you say, it's creative, but it's just different. Like they play at their own pace. Yeah. Like they're not just like
and that makes them hard to mark a lot too. Like one thing I think when I played at Humboldt, why they ended up in my senior year, we were like tanking to start the year. And then when I started playing, we started winning more. Is I think what helped us is that they all played as a unit so much that they were predictable. Mm-hmm. A lot of them were, highly skilled players, and some of them were really good, but they played so much in a certain style that it was like, you could read the rhythm as a defender.
Yeah.
And, I think why I helped that team was I was a different type of rhythm. I could come on and they'd be like, oh, what? Like, it threw them off in practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
But it all helps. Like I read a great article one time about who wins the World Cup. Uh-huh. And it was all like, there's like 4 or 5 main things, but one of them was a diversity of players. Like it wasn't all one type of person. Mm-hmm. And like every World Cup winner ever has been like, when Brazil won, it was like, a half black and half white team. When Germany won, it was like half Polish. There was like, even the West German team was like a really more diverse team than it looked when they won it. Mm-hmm. And you're like, huh, okay. But it comes up in style. Like if you're all identical, you better be really good, or you need like some little change of step.
Yeah. 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 I can say that as like a defender, like what you were saying earlier, that you would come on and you would kind of change the rhythm, like the look of the team. Like when you're playing against a team, like you say, that they all play the same way on like offensively, and they're swinging the ball back and forth, and you don't have that player that can break the line or that would look to dribble. Then all of a sudden a player comes on and as a mid, he gets the ball from the right side, about to swing to the left, and he just stops and the guy keeps going. Like something as simple as that. Just like disrupting the rhythm.
Yep.
It throws you off as a defender, especially like when a player like you is in the mid and you're getting marked by other midfielders and other forwards. Like they don't know how to defend like the back line, Yeah. So for you to just go on and kind of disrupt that and just kind of switch up the style, the rhythm, and playing at your own pace. I think that's the most important thing. Mm-hmm. That's what I tell like midfielders. Like, dude, we don't have to swing it as that fast. Like you can keep the ball at your feet. You can
stand
dribble
there for a minute. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Do
like,
whatever you want.
Yeah.
The problem I had at Humboldt was re-engaging defensively, because I would like go off on some tangent, which helped us. It helped us at times. But when we played Sonoma State, we ended up tying them twice, but I didn't play a whole lot in those games because they were so tactical and they were so patient. Mm-hmm. That like having one center midi on Humboldt, like running around like crazy, like didn't quite fit the game.
Yeah.
And we ended up tying 0-0 and 1-1, like no goals really.
Yeah.
And I played a lot in the first game was a little more wide open, but same thing. Like I was in it. And the second game was like super tactical and like they didn't even want me out there, mm-hmm. And that was, I actually got better at that after college, because I started realizing what they taught me in college. When I hit like 24, 25, I was better.
And how did you even get good enough to play at that style? Like growing up, it was all high school or like men's league. Like who did you play with? Who taught you those things, or did you just pick it up as you went on?
Tom Charters, Chris Charters, his dad. I don't know if you guys know Tom, but he was my soccer coach in high school for a while. He taught me a lot. We used to do the Zemer camps. I don't know. It wasn't like I had a huge coaching system. Yeah, I don't even know how to answer that. Mm-hmm. Like again, like that's why the Mexican League has been such an interesting part of my world, is that like, my main coaches in life, if we're counting years, was Pancho for like 7 years, and I didn't speak English, or he didn't speak English. I didn't speak Spanish. Yeah. He'd like draw me diagrams in the sand. Yeah. And in Augustine, and he didn't speak English really either. Like when I came home from Colombia, he's like, ahora hablas español. Podemos hablar, no? And I was like, See? Like after like 6 years of knowing him,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Because my Spanish got better and he was like, no shit.
Yeah.
And now we're like homies. But there was like 2-3 years where he'd just be like, okay, Wedo's here. He's pretty good. Like, let's make him run.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that was the game.
That guy's funny.
Yeah, it's so
Oh, so
interesting.
funny.
Like the whole men's league, like around these like small areas like Ukiah,
Yeah.
County, you know, like for some people it's like the most competitive soccer they've ever played, and for other
Yeah.
people it's just like something to pass the time.
It's both. Well, and I think it used to be more competitive. Like, I hate to say, when I was like in my late teens, early 20s, there was just more teams.
It seemed like it. There was like Division 1, Division 2.
Yeah, and they're packed. It was like
Yeah.
12, 13 teams in each. And they were like, again, like we talked about this a minute earlier, like when you guys first showed up, about how you could like see the flow of immigrants coming over the border at times too, because it was like their meeting place.
Mm-hmm.
Like, especially me as a kid, where they'd be like, I just remember countless times and being like, that guy right there, he just showed up. Like, you got to mark him. He's good. And I'm like, where's he from? And they'd be like, oh, Sinaloa. And I'm like, what? Like, where's that?
Yeah.
But that was them like showing up. Like, it was probably people's parents that I know and stuff now,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, it's so weird. Yeah, that is something we were talking about earlier. Like you just the 1 year, like it's one person is like the leading goal scorer, and the next this guy that just came across the border and just like, who is that? Like, where did he come from? And he's like the best one, and you find out he played like second division in Mexico,
Sure.
and he's over here dribbling everyone and messing around.
Mm-hmm.
Like, damn,
And
that's
he's
crazy.
just like out there for a workout. Yeah.
yeah,
That was the cool thing though, is like soccer is always the thing that kept us kind of together, that regardless of not knowing Spanish or not knowing
Sure.
English, we could always still come down, and they know how you're going to play. They know you're going to
They know your
pass
style.
the ball, your style.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you get to
Yeah.
know people over the time. Because I remember times playing and people from the other team, they know who you were. Like,
Yeah.
you know, before, I know you said you played for 15 years, but
Yeah.
they know, oh, that's Lloyd. They knew you by your name, you
they
know?
know
yeah.
you now.
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, so I was thinking about the Mexican league though, and I had like two moments that really stood out. One was winning the league, because when I was a kid, it's like, you gotta win the league. Like, if you can't win your own league, like, you're not nothing as a player. You know what I mean? Like, you can't win the local league.
Yeah,
But we won that when I was 25, and then a couple years later, I had this one moment where I was like, because of course I'm like Wedo or Whitey or that random guy over there, like Mark, you know, my number,
yeah,
and my name's Lloyd, so like most of the Mexican league can't say my name to start with.
yeah.
And there's this one game, and there's this old guy, and there's this kid, and the game's about to start, and I'm like tying my shoes, and he looks over at the kid, and he taps the kid, and he goes, "That's Lloyd right there." And I was like, "What?"
Mhm.
Like, I don't know these guys.
Yeah.
And he used my first name, which is
Yeah.
like unheard of.
Yeah.
Even if you're a Mexican guy in the
Yeah.
Mexican league, you still have a nickname.
Yeah.
And I was like, damn, he even knows my first name.
Yeah.
Like, it was like
Yeah.
the funniest moment of like, huh. And it was in Ukiah. It's like, does that mean I can go through Ukiah and be like, hey, like, I honestly feel safer, like, in those respects of like, I know the whole community now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like, my brother as well, who's like, you know, pretty hid out in the woods in Albion, he'll be up in Fort Bragg and have Mexican guys be like, yo, what up, Lloyd? Because he looks like me.
Oh, really?
All the time. Like,
Yeah.
he has like beers offered to him, and it's like an icebreaker in the whole community.
Totally.
You know, and I mean, I 100% appreciate like the welcomeness. Like, I could go off forever about how like the Hispanic homies who I played soccer with have been so welcoming to me.
Yeah.
Like, you know, buying me lunches, paying for gas, paying for refs, just driving me everywhere when I was a kid.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's
Like,
it's,
you can't get over that.
yeah, that's something that me and Gabe talked about. Like, it's just a way, like we mentioned earlier, like it's a way to just connect you with people you wouldn't have met outside of
man.
that, you know?
I mean,
Like,
I speak Spanish now, like not
Mhm.
perfectly, but like
Mhm.
that's pretty much 100% from the Mexican league.
yeah.
Like, cause I'd go traveling a little bit and you learn a little bit, but then I'd come home and I could just practice. Like, not a lot of like white people who aren't like dialed into like some, you know, the logging scene or the kitchen scene. Like,
Mhm.
you need a place. And like you guys naturally have a place to like learn English or whatever.
Mhm.
You know, people who show up here because we're all speaking it. But like, you know, if you want to learn Spanish here, you need a place. And you know, for me, it was just soccer because it was so natural. It's like I wanted to learn it, and they wanted me to know how to speak it.
Yeah,
Totally.
yeah.
You know,
Are you going to be around like the area for a while?
I think so. I don't know. My plans are so up in the air just because, you know, I don't know. Every couple of years, I moved to Arcata last year,
Mhm.
and it was cool up there. I actually really like Arcata still.
How was that?
It was really neat. You know, I had a couple college friends there, but you know, the hard one I'll bring up though is like, once you're dialed in a community like I am, or probably you guys too, is that so much of your stuff is here. And I went through this a lot. Like me and Gabe were talking about substitute teaching a bit ago. And like I moved to San Francisco a couple times, like just for a couple months here and there, just substitute teach. And which was crazy. Like that was my first teaching experience. It was in San Francisco.
What were you teaching?
I was teaching, it was at a school, Thomas Edison Charter Academy, and they did half their classes in English and half in Spanish. So like all the Hispanic kids could have a place to speak their native language, and all the white kids and black kids had a place to learn it. So it was like an equal playing field in a lot of ways. And they didn't have any subs who spoke Spanish. So they pretty much hired me almost every day when I wanted to, because there's like, you know, they had like 10 teachers who spoke Spanish, and 1 out of 10 is gone a lot, you know? So I was there quite a bit. And, but what really struck home for me was not like I shouldn't be helping those kids, but if I have all these connections in my hometown and these are like my nieces and nephews and my friends' kids, and like who's teaching them? You know, it's like a mutual, like we need the same role everywhere. And so, you know, a lot of it, like I did it in Arcata, great experience in Arcata substitute teaching up there. I met a lot of cool people through that. You know, you get the vibe of a community quicker than anything. I swear, if you want to know a community, go substitute teach for a minute. Like you'll see the parents pick up their kids, like you get to meet them all, you know.
I think teaching in general, to be honest, because ever since I started teaching, it's like I can't go into Safeway without running into somebody who knows me or knows of me. And
man, I was in San Francisco doing that.
Yeah,
like go to San Francisco if you want to feel comfortable. Like you'll have like little kids waving at you. And
exactly.
People will be like, dude, you know those little kids? Like, yeah, I taught them yesterday. And you can't like buy that. You know, you taught those kids how to read yesterday. Like I was teaching little Mexican kids how to read in Spanish, and like I'd see them on the street and they'd be like, "Hey man, how are you?" And I'd be like, "Great, dude. Like, how's it going?" I'm serious. Like, how do you get around that? Like you can't, like I taught him how to read yesterday.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You know,
did they teach you Spanish at all? Like, did they teach you?
Way better, dude. My Spanish got way better.
Yeah.
I used to come to class and I'd go like this, like for people who get Spanish enough, and I'd show up and I'd be like, "Hola, ¿cómo estás? Si no hablo bien y si quieres enseñarme, lo necesito." And they'd be like, "Oh, sí?" And I'd be like, "Yeah." And the best part was my Spanish wasn't good. So I'd literally be like, ¿qué es eso? And they'd be like, "Ah, libro." And I'd be like, "Oh, a book, right." And the best part is I could only go up to 3rd grade though, because 4th grade they spoke too good. I didn't understand them.
Too intimidating.
It was too intimidating. But they taught me all kinds of stuff, because they want to, like, I've learned this about kids, you know, in all those videos they make you watch through being a teacher. There's one that I forget where I saw it, but it's totally true. And that's that kids want to be able to be the teacher or be engaged on that level. So if you're like, "Look, I don't read, like read to me," they'll literally be like, "No problem. Like I can do this. Like I'm the teacher now. Like this is my situation that I control as a kid." And I definitely learned it with soccer. Like if you're teaching a soccer team and they're learning how to switch the ball, don't stop the game and be like, "Look, let me teach you how to switch the ball." They just taught themselves. Like give them kudos for doing it. Tell them that you didn't teach them, that they taught themselves. And then it's theirs. Like the soccer team is theirs. Like not yours.
They feel good about it because they're like, I did that.
I did that. Like same with reading. Like I remember at this school in San Francisco, I did this thing where I'd come in and I'd tell them that I couldn't read. And without fail, the kid who was on the principal's list, like he gets in trouble all the time, would read. Because he would be like, "I'll control this class." And you literally let him. And you just be like, "Go ahead and read to me." He'd read to you. And then the next day the teacher would be like, "Dude, that kid read to you?" And you'd be like, "Yeah, I just told him that I couldn't do it. And he was a badass if he could." You know? And they'd go from being like the worst kid to the best because it was theirs. You know, it's not like you're there being like, "Look, you don't know what you're doing. I'm reading to you." Like they don't want that. Like no kid wants that.
Yeah.
You know, and so I've always been on this kick with the teaching and the coaching world of like, make it theirs, like in every way possible. You know what I mean? Like you teach them stuff, but like if they know how to kick a ball, let the kid teach the other kids. You know, let the kid do the chalkboard talk. Like, you know, because then it's theirs.
Yeah.
You know, and then they'd work harder.
Totally.
You know.
That's awesome. I feel like that you're giving them, that's like a very creative way to teach, to coach. Like you're giving them the control
as much as possible.
And it's like more hands-on. And that's how I learn. I learn by doing it, not just by being told like I have to go out and do it to get a hang of it. You know
if somebody does a math problem, you just watch. Like
I'm not gonna learn. Yeah, I have to do it myself and getting reps in, repetition, totally practicing it.
Even when it comes to being in charge, though, like for me, the repetition on like let's say you make kids do reps, like kick a ball, kick a ball, kick a ball. like they might get bogged down. But if you're like, okay, you pick the next drill. And then now they're like, oh, like I kicked the ball for these reasons. Like now let's try a different, you know what I mean? Like you want them to be comfortable being in charge. Cause like, let's say let's say the game starts and the crowd's loud and you can't yell across the field. Who's going to be the communicator on the team? Like
they got to make decisions for themselves.
And they're better for it. You know, so are we. It's like a person thing, really.
Totally.
Would you want to do teaching full time, or because you said substituting? Like, would you want to just be a full time teacher?
You know, my personal goal right now or my personal life plan, if you want to hear it, is I'm sort of on this writing kick and art kick a little bit right now. Really, just writing. I'm writing a book and writing some short stories, whatever.
What's the book about?
Man, I've been doing this book for like 9 years, really.
Really?
I've never talked to you guys about this.
No, never.
I might have mentioned it, but
yeah, it's a book about a guy who goes to heaven and he just like kicks the bucket because he's just like, what's going on in life? And he gets hit by a golf ball, really. And so the whole book takes place in heaven, and it's called Meeting Odd because when he gets there, God's name isn't God, it's Odd. And it's all about how, you know, our perception of what this like royalty life should be, like what should God be, you know, and to me, it's not even supposed to be a religious book. It's like, what should our expectations be of the afterlife, of life on earth? Like, you know, how do we set up these things that really aren't like the lessons come in you in different ways. So why would you have it be like a glorified heaven situation? So it all takes place in heaven, really. Yeah. And I mean, the title of the book sort of makes it make sense, like, because he gets there and God's name is Odd and he's a caveman. So like God's a caveman. That's how I came up with. And he's like, well, what do you want? Want me to wear a robe? I'm like, no, man. Like this is my normal outfit I've worn forever. Like robes just got invented. And so I sort of run with that whole theme of just like, you know, what are our real answers in those senses? Like if you could meet God, what would you really ask him? Like, I realized I didn't have a whole lot of questions. You know what I mean? Like I really thought about the God topic a lot because my mom's so religious and I don't know if I am really. Like my mom, this is a great story in my family though. My mom, when she was in Guadalajara, she started going to church with the maid lady when she was like 15. And her mom would sit outside in the car because none of them were religious. And then her mom started going inside. And then her mom started like reading the Bible. And then her dad started going inside. And then they all were like sort of just going down this religious path a little bit. And then the brothers were all like 20, 21. They drove to Guadalajara to get them to not go to church.
Jeez.
And then they like sort of started morphing into like reading the Bible. And now two of them, well, my uncle just passed, but my uncle and my aunt were pastors. They're also extremely religious. And it's all from this little thing of my mom being like, I'm going to church with the maid in Guadalajara.
Dang.
Yeah, crazy, right?
That's crazy.
It's insane.
Yeah.
When did you start writing this book or what?
Oh, I started writing this book when I was 25. So it's 9 years ago. I was actually here in Mendo, and to me, this is a moment that I hope everybody sort of has is, I realized I was like, how can I really give back in a true sense of like history of time? You know, not like give you an apple or give you $1. Like that's nothing really. But how do you like share a story that actually has longevity to it? And this whole book story came up because I wanted to write a story about not who we want God to be, but who God, like, listen to this, who God would have to be for us to get where we're at. Like who would he have to be to allow, you know, the cartels to exist, to allow horrible politics to exist, to allow, you know, womanizing to exist. Like it's not this perfect character. And then, so I thought a little more about it, and really who I consider to be the God character in our world is the mind of a caveman. Cause like who has actually brought us to this state? Like it's been this very like brutalistic, you know, mentality that we all have, especially as men. Like you can't tell me you haven't had a moment of like, I'm gonna smash this, you know, and that's been the main state of mind for our species for thousands of years, in my opinion. And I think, you know, hopefully we get over it, but I'm more looking at it as like, what would allow that to happen? What would allow us to be where we're at? Like so if that's the case, then really all I could think of is a caveman. And that's I think, the right answer. Not to say there isn't like a spiritual God that gives us enlightenment or whatever, because that's almost a different concept in my mind. But I'm more looking at like the leadership of the direction of our species. Like, what would the God of our species have to be?
And why 9 years? Like, is it something that you just kind of?
I thought it'd take me 6 months.
A little bit longer than expected.
Yeah. Well, where I got with all this, what I was saying, I hope people get this feeling is, I was here in Mendo, like overlooking the surf, and I had a moment of like, I am truly supported. Like, I can't tell you what that feeling is. Like, if you haven't felt it, you haven't felt it. And it's because of this community. Like, I could be home. Like, even now I have to move out of this little studio in 2 weeks. I still don't have a place to move into. And I'm not even that worried. Like, my friend's going to take my piano. My sister can put my bed in the back. I can go stay at a friend's cottage. Like, and it doesn't really, like, I'm not affected like that in that way. So I knew that I could give up 6 months of my life or a year. Like, I could just have zero money, zero anything. And I would have like the crab job or the boat job. Like, they want me to do that.
You have options.
Endless. Yeah. I mean, you guys do too. Like, I don't want people to think that these options are like limited to like these basic concepts. You have to stir the pot. Like, for any of us, like if you guys want to go to Alaska, like, I'm not the guy, but I know the guy. And now you guys can go make a chunk of money and have 6 months off. Like, go write your own book. You know what I mean? We all have, not all, but like most people have little ins like that are like, if you really get the ball rolling on them, which I have, I've put a lot back into this community to where people want to help me. And now I have this like freedom of mind, or freedom of almost anything, like financial problems, housing problems. Even though I don't have a house, like, I don't have a housing problem, and that just enables you to think about what you want. So for me, I was like, what do I want to answer? Like, it was like you guys ever watched the movie Good Will Hunting?
Yeah.
I haven't, no.
Oh, we just talking about this? Yeah, it's a good movie.
It's great. But at one point, Robin Williams is asking, who's it, Matt Damon?
Yeah.
Because
Robin Williams.
Yeah, dude, it's great.
It's a good movie. It's a good movie. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So he goes, at one point, the kid's like the smartest kid on earth, and he can do a math problem instantly. And he's like, what do you want? Like, you have everything. What do you want?
To the kid.
It's when he's sitting on the bench outside. I think. And he's
but I always say that to myself. And I'm not a genius. You know what I mean? I just have everything. Like, and I think a lot of people do have more than they think. If you have a certain amount of support through your parents or a certain amount of support through your friends, like, a lot of this feeling I get is through my friend group. Like, they're not best friends of mine, but they're not going to let me go homeless. You know what I mean? So if I have that type of support, what do I want to address? And, even when you brought up teaching a minute ago, I do feel like I'm going to get my teaching credential and do the teaching path here coming up. But I have a window, to sort of tell my late 30s, I guess, because, once you can teach until you're 60, I don't need to start that right now.
Even later, honestly.
Yeah. Well, and Joel Wells, Andrew's dad, told me this great one where he's like, no, you get your teaching credential at 40. So right when you retire, you get your pension or you get your retirement the day you retire. So you're not like waiting for 5 years.
Huh.
You know what I mean?
I didn't even think about that.
Because like, let's say you retire after 25 years, you're only going to be 50.
Yeah.
And then what? You have 15 years until you get your retirement.
I didn't think about it.
Me neither. I just got told this. But then I was like, well, I'm going to wait. Because then you know what I mean? Like, I'll do all the physical labor now. Because why have this window where I'm an old guy, like, trying to find a new job or teach for 40 years? Like, no, that sounds brutal. And, but I love the teaching world. I'm just realizing, though, that this is like a window in my life where I sort of have the ability to do anything. I'm not like Superman, but I like going crabbing, man. Going commercial crabbing, had this moment of like, oh my God, are you really doing this? And doing it. You're like, am I really doing this? Like, this is nuts.
I'm sure you must have crazy stories of all your experiences and all that.
I mean, I got quite a few, yeah. But, even this year, just like doing the crabbing thing, we're on a boat that's like not much bigger than about the size of the room we're in. And, the swells were not mellow. You know what I mean? You're out there being like, man, if I were 40, I would not do this. I mean, there's definitely 40-year-olds doing it and 60-year-olds doing it. But like, I was the pot mover guy. So I got like 120-pound pots. The boat's moving like crazy. And I got to lift them and walk back through the back where there's like water coming over the deck and waves smashing us. And you got to not drop this pot. And it's 100-something pounds. And you got to stack it up like higher.
Dude, that's so scary,
intense.
It's so nuts. But at the same time, it's like, there's only certain windows you can do that. Like even now, like I have, let's say I broke my leg. I have a whole group that would like take care of me, and I don't have kids, and I don't have this, and I don't, where it's like, I can actually set up a structure that lets me have that freedom, you know, like do that stuff now, you know, like teaching will still be there.
Yeah. That's cool that you have those friends that you know that you can rely on, because I think now, especially with social media, it's like people have like thousands of friends online.
Yeah.
But how many of those people can you really rely on? To, like you said, if you broke it, like who would take care of you? Who's got your stuff? Like who could you move in with?
And I don't, you know, the hard one I don't have an answer for right now, and I wish I did, is I actually started reading this book called 10 Reasons to Delete Your Social, or 10 Arguments to Delete Your Social Media Account. And he brings up this whole thing about like wolf packs and individual wolves, of like, that's how wolves act. And then he's like, but we're acting more like that as people now, like more and more, like we're sort of like a dog pack type of species. But if everybody's buying into the social media, we're making one dog pack that's like a billion people and nobody knows each other. You know, instead of like back to the Mexican League. When I was in the Mexican League, they were like part of my dog pack. Like Nal and Adon would like watch my back, like in Fort Bragg and Ukiah. You know, like it became this circle. And he's sort of bringing up that like, if we change the shape of our dog pack, we don't know people, you know, and you start buying in off of like social cues and all these stuff. But the cue is not even a person, it's a phone. You know what I mean? So like, how do we keep these circles that function rather than just like texting circles, I guess? Or I don't know, you know?
Yeah.
I'm like,
That's an interesting concept. Because I know after like we mentioned that one time, we grew up with social media, you know, like you were around like before.
It's like it came up when I was in college. Like Facebook got invented when I was like a sophomore in college or junior in college.
Yeah. So like you knew a childhood before like social media and stuff like that. So it's like back then, bro, you had to like I remember when I was dating my girlfriend when I was little, like I would have to call. You know what I'm saying? You have to call and hey, is blah, blah, blah there? Like, can I speak to her? Like, yeah, she's right here.
That's so funny. That
you know what I'm saying? Like,
because I remember times that I was in that school.
Bro, you couldn't even just send a text or send a snap or something. You had to like physically go.
I had a phone. This is before I had a phone, and everyone had house phones, but I didn't know this chick's home phone number. So literally, I made plans, and there was Facebook. I was so just like not in touch with social media when it was starting off.
Yeah, me neither.
But like I had an email or whatever.
Sure.
And so I would tell her, I was like, hey, go home and then hop onto your email and we'll chat on the email. I'm like one message. Yeah, dude. It was so bad. I was like, hey, I missed you. And I just saw her like 20 minutes ago. It's just so funny that like how it's evolved now. Like I came from responding on emails to now like it's a text, a call away or whatever.
So when I was in the city, I had this older guy I met on the bus. Like I love riding the buses in the city. And this old guy starts talking to me and social media gets brought up. And he was like, yeah, you wouldn't believe it. When I was old or young, they would go meet. There's like a big, the convention center or one of those, a big bell tower or something, like one of the big open spots in the city. So this is like the 40s maybe. This guy was old.
Yeah.
He said that you would all go there and just go there. And he's like, you just walk around this big tower, like in a circle, just walking like, oh, there she is. And you'd walk over and be like, hey, I made it. No, but you'd meet there on purpose. So like, instead of like sending her a message on email, you'd be like, hey,
you just knew to go.
Bell tower, like 7 o'clock. She's like, 6:30. And but he was like, it was so common though, that it was like a whole like social herd of people like meeting dates at this place, whether it was a date or just friend, like. But now it's like, it's so crazy how coordinated we are. Like me and you guys, even from meeting for this, it was like, bing, 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 bing. Here you go. And we meet in a little room. Like back in even 15 years ago, we'd meet in like the parking lot over there, like before cell phones. And then we walk over here and you know what I mean?
We would have. Yeah. And even back then, like you say you're going to be somewhere at this time, you have to be there.
You
can't just
talked about that.
Cancel on them.
Like
now it's so much easier to like flake out on anything, on plans, or just like I don't feel like meeting him. It's like, dude, I told him I was gonna be there. I told him 3 days ago I was gonna be there at 8 a.m. Like I had to be there at 8 a.m. And I feel like nowadays that's like kind of deteriorating.
There's more accountability back then. I told him my word. Like I gotta go now. I can't just show up.
What's a word? And you know that used to be a thing. That's my word.
That's my word. Yeah.
Now people are like, that's my text.
Yeah, that's my text. Yeah.
Like that was a real thing. That was my word, dude. That's like gone now.
My word is oak.
My word is a piece of paper.
I remember. I don't even know why I said I remember, but like I definitely feel now like with my use of social media going up, it's definitely harder for me to hold a conversation, or I get more anxiety trying to hold a conversation with someone. And that's just like me like analyzing how I am as a person, kind of like self-reflecting. And that's
interesting. I'm worried that coming out of this Corona thing, we're gonna get a lot of that.
Do you think so?
I mean, I feel like I'm feeling it because I'm really social and I never really have conversation anxiety. But I feel like I'm getting it a little bit because I'm not talking. Like I haven't really been chilling with people that much.
Right.
It's like a skill.
It's a skill.
You have to like constantly like work on it and see people and interact with them and talk. And I feel like that some of that, and maybe not all of it, but some of it for me is like kind of died out or gone away, and I just have to.
It's up to you. I mean, I don't consider you a bad conversationalist, but
that's what that was kind of what I was trying to transition into, is like with doing this, just like kind of shooting the shit with someone and keeping it going and trying to find next talking points and kind of keep the conversation going. It's like good practice, you know.
I keep thinking though about like the older crowd, because like growing up in Elk, there was a definite like older group. Like my neighbor, I have like one old neighbor guy he wasn't that old when I met him, you know, but now he is. He is so good at like just talking. Yeah, you could sit there and you could talk to him about a tree for an hour. You know what I mean? That's just how he does it. Like, oh, look at this, look at that, look at the bird, and you're just like, before you know it, you're like, wow, we just talked for an hour. And oh yeah, and it's actually something I really saw in Alaska. Like, catch this. This is a really interesting like character thing I started noticing up there. Is that the pace of life is so slow. Because it's like you'll be out in the middle of nowhere and somebody drives up on a skiff. Like pretty common little mini boat will come up to you. And you're like, hey, how's it going? And they're like, oh, good. Like, we got to be over there in a couple hours. Because like, what if the tides change? What if something happened? Like, there's all these little things that like, there's no buses, not like everything's on a different schedule. Like, it's more like a week. Like you could like my buddy from Alaska who I went crabbing with, he gets everywhere like a week early just to like prep and feel good on the boat. I'm like, a week? And he's like, well, I don't know. I'm like, I just like it. But he's from there. And it's a whole environment that like you don't really see here because we're in such a rushed culture. And up there, the main things are like salmon season in the summer, black cod in the fall, and you could go crabbing. But I'm not saying that as a negative. I'm saying that as like it's so planned out and it's such random or particular events that they just wait. They're like, oh yeah, we don't have anything to do for a month. Like salmon aren't here for a month, and they'll just sit there.
They'll just relax.
Oh, dude,
chill out.
Which is like, some of me is like, oh wow, what a crazy scene. But you see it in the individuals. They're really good at small talk, sort of, or they're really bad. That's the other one. Yeah, because they just sit on their boats by themselves. But they can kick it. It's like such a weird mentality of like I feel it here. Like one of the big ones I noticed with the cell phone world was you get a cell phone, and let's say the three of us are all talking outside, and I want to leave the conversation just for no reason. I'm just like itchy and I want to leave. I'll look at my phone and go, later, guys.
That's your way out.
It's my way out. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be a text. It could be nothing there.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just a way to be like, oh, like grandma called. Like, even if grandma's not even alive.
I think we've all done that every now and then. Like,
but like up there, they don't even have cell service. Like you can't be like, you'd be like, where are you going? And they'd be like, oh, like I still have an hour and a half to wait for the tides to change, or else they can't get through that inlet over there. And now you're another hour and a half. Like you're sitting there. Like they're totally comfortable. It's so nuts. But it's healthy too. It's like a healthy, like, oh, this is just a cool way to interact. Like no hurry.
I think it totally is. Yeah. And I think doing this podcast has helped me a lot more. Just like, okay, like what are we going to talk about next? Like thinking on top of my head, oh, we could bring up this, we could bring up that. And then I've found myself now when I'm holding conversations, I'm always finding new things to talk about. It makes it so much easier.
Well, and it's just a natural flow, I think, too, of like, you're not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. Yeah. Like, if we all pause here for 30 seconds, like, it's not going to kill us.
That point right there, like, just the what is it called? Like, the lull? The null? The lull?
Yeah.
That, like, I used to think those were so awkward. I just used to feel so uncomfortable in this. Sure. And now it's like, sometimes I enjoy it's almost like comforting, you know? And I noticed that when I'm with, like, say, my dad or driving with Gabe or somebody that I'm comfortable with in the car or at the house or something, and there's just like a lull, like there's nothing. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, you know? Like, but when I'm with people that I'm like don't know that well.
You know, it's classic though. Again, like you hang out with old people and they'll just sit there, like both of them. They won't say anything, and then you'll be like, "How's they?" And they'll be like. And you're like, good. But what are they going to really sit there and just rattle at you? Yeah. Like part of me is like, no, they got it dialed. Like
that's so funny. I used to think that was so weird. Also, like I'd go out to eat and then I'd like be looking at someone like a couple or something sitting next to me and they're just quiet and they're just sitting and just sitting there, just not on their phones or anything, just sitting there,
just enjoying each other's company.
And I'm just
old
like,
school.
I'm like, what the heck is wrong? Like, dude, this person's not even talking to her. Like,
or couples that do that. I'm like, you guys hate each other?
Yeah, that's what I would think. I think you guys must really not like each other. But it's just like, no, they're just comfortable around each other enough to where they don't feel the need that they have to constantly say something. You know?
I feel like after being together for so long, you just run out of things to talk about.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, definitely in the boat world. Like, I just did 6 weeks with basically the same 2 people, like in a boat the size of this room.
Damn.
You don't get tired of them?
Hell yeah. They're probably tired of me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's not an insult. It's like, you two go spend 6 weeks in a room together.
Yeah.
Like, by the end, you'd be like, nice shirt, dude. Like, that's like, what else are you going to talk about? There's like nothing left. You know? The cool part though is that after 6 weeks, you get like the philosophy conversations get brought up a lot more. Where you're like, okay, what do you think about this? You know, we've already talked about your shirt. We've already talked about the fish.
Really deep conversations.
Yeah. And, you know, especially with people you don't know are going to go there. You know, that's why podcasts for an hour work. Like if me and you just sat here, like, how was college soccer? We'd be done already. You know, but if we're like, we're going to sit here for an hour, like after 45 minutes, you're like, well, I have been thinking this. And then you go there.
Right.
You know, and it just gets magnified the longer, you know, you're stuck with people in a good way or a bad way.
Totally.
You know,
something I've been meaning to ask you is you brought up a lot of like your trip to Alaska. You were talking about earlier how you studied abroad in Puebla.
Yeah.
Like, do you bounce around a lot? Like, do you find comfort in doing that? Because I do know a lot of people that kind of, or I have friends that don't really like traveling and they don't really like being away from their home. And I just always thought it was interesting how there was people that were the complete opposite. And just like bouncing around. They like being in new places.
I really like bouncing around. You know, I'll admit the decent portion of it for me. You know, the Pueblo one was when I was in college and I just wanted to do it. But
talk about that. How was that?
Oh man, that was cool. You know, the interesting one that I had trouble explaining to the family I was living with was I had, as much as anything at the time, I had a culture clash over like almost like a rich poor culture clash more than I had a Mexican versus American culture clash, because they were really like high end, like they were related to the Felipe Calderon. They were like in his family.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it wasn't like they were rich, but they were very well spoken and very well educated. You know, the dad was the guy who like did enrollment at the university I went to. So he was like, you know, way up there in the university. And they were really nice people. But it was really crazy to see like stuff that I would do with my Mexican friends here, because I was playing Mexican league soccer all the time, you know, and stuff I'd do with them, I couldn't go do with this family.
What do you mean stuff? Like what would you?
Like I had a beer at lunch one time. It's like 110 degrees and we'd all come home and have lunch because we didn't live that far from the school.
Yeah.
And so usually they had 2 daughters there and they had a son who was studying in Germany, I think. But the 2 daughters would usually come home and me and the parents would have dinner or lunch every day, like the big midday meal. And it was like 110 degrees or something. And I'm like dying. I'm done with school. It's like 1, 2 o'clock. And I'm like, I just like grabbed the beer out of the fridge, cracked it, and they just went silent. And I was like, it's 100 degrees. Like it's 100 degrees here.
Did you say anything?
Did they not drink?
I said it's 100 degrees. I was like,
did they not drink?
They'd have like a beer in the evening, but they weren't a party family.
You think they thought you were an alcoholic or something?
Dude, when I went down there, you know those little poncho vest things you'll see? Like in like, you know, classic Hispanic stuff or whatever. My buddy got me one of those. So when I sent them my photo, I was wearing that. I probably shouldn't have been, because they were like, dude, you got here and we thought you were a drug dealer for sure. And I was like, what? And they're like, you're wearing the drug dealer jacket.
It's got like 3 pounds in his bag.
But like, I didn't even smoke weed then. Like I didn't smoke weed in high school.
Okay.
I didn't smoke weed until I was even at the end of college.
Well, it's so prevalent here in Mendocino County. I mean, that's what we're known for.
Yeah. And it was such a big part of my childhood, just from like my neighbors and stuff, that I didn't want to do it. You know, I mean, not so much my neighbors, but it was just like everywhere, you know?
Yeah.
But what made you not want to do it exactly? Like,
it was sort of a mix of sports and this feeling that I had that like, I'm happy without it. So why would I do it? I mean, like I smoke now, but that's, you know, it's sort of hard to explain though, because I think you get in these places in life where you're like, look, if you guys are all doing that and you're the same as me, and I don't know how it would help me because we're all the same already.
Right.
Like, why would I do it? Like, I'm having just as much fun as you are right now. And, you know, that's something I wish I held on to more, really, because like we all have like social pressures and, you know, we do all kinds of weird stuff.
Yeah.
But but you know, I think that was a big part of it. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, a lot of it was sports. I wanted to keep playing sports, and I was like, if I'm like being a stoner, it's not going to work out.
Yeah.
But like, I think we had like 60 kids in our class, and I think there's like 7 that didn't smoke weed. Like
everyone was pretty much doing it.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. And more than that, though, I mean, that was a real eye opener for me. Of just seeing how much like drug use is at the schools.
Yeah.
You know, like especially as a teacher. Like as a kid, I knew it was there, and I knew who was doing what a little bit. But as a teacher, you know, you see it in a sort of, I don't want to call it a darker way, but more like why certain kids are doing it. You realize they don't have parents, or you realize that their parents are really into pills themselves. Dude. And then you're like, wait, like I see a problem here. I don't just see like some kid goofing off. Like when you're in high school, you're like, oh, my buddy did, you know, some ecstasy or something. It's like, oh, that's stupid. But, you know, as an adult, you look at it and you're like, whoa, like that kid's doing that for a reason. And it's usually not the best reason, you know, like not to say I haven't done these things myself, but I certainly wasn't doing them in high school. Yeah. And I don't know, like it's a hard line though, because, you know, a lot of kids that I think, I mean, one of the biggest things I always want to tell everybody else is like a lot of those kids need help, and a lot of them need outlets, like not just, they don't need math class. They don't need that type of help. They need like just a happy day,
like a mentor, someone to spend
sit down and talk to somebody.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the cream of the crop if you can actually have like a mentor that you interact with. But I mean, like they actually just need like a joyful moment. Like you forget that some of these kids go home to families that aren't fun. Yeah. And like, again, I was listening to a podcast about a teacher in Georgia, I think it was, and he was going off about who wants to come back to school and who doesn't. And he was like, you know what I didn't quite realize was all of the homeless kids really want to come back. Yeah. Because they just want a meal. They want, you know, a comfortable place to like relax for the day. Like even if it's just sleeping in the corner of math class, like that is important. Like I've had kids sleep in class where I've been like, no, he needs to sleep. Yeah. And it's like, what do you say when the principal walks in and you know that kid is just exhausted from whatever the hell. And, you know, and again, this is where it really helps. Like we were talking about subbing in San Francisco. You know, I was in the Mission where it was like mostly Hispanic, some black kids, like couple white kids in the whole school, and a lot of white teachers. And there's a natural like barrier of what you were allowed to tell the kids, because they would be like, no, you don't know what I'm doing. And here, even at Fort Bragg, that's more Hispanic than Mendo, I went to Mendo High and I know the whole Fort Bragg crowd. And I just tell kids, I'm like, no, I know exactly what you're doing. I lived your life. And I did, you know? And so they can't really be like, hey guy, like, what are you doing here? You know, and I'm not, it's mainly, it makes me want to get people to teach in their own hometowns. Like if you're from San Francisco, go teach at the San Francisco high schools. If you're from Fort Bragg, go to, yeah, because they can't, it's just a benefit. Like when I go to Mendo High, I literally walk in like, oh yeah, hey, that's my poster. Like I went here, oh, I read that book. Like that book. Like you should read that particular, like, look, there's my initials. And it adds up, you know, kids, you know, even if you have a successful life, like they'll be like, oh, Mr. So-and-so has a good life. And they know your parents, they know your history, and they can see the effort, you know. Like I have a lot of kids that, you know, especially from the Elk crowd, that know my personal history, and then they can take it in a new direction where they're like, wow, like he did get through that, you know, because they know me. Totally. And you just can't replace that at a school where you didn't grow up. I mean, you can try, but it's harder.
Definitely harder. And I think I totally related to everything you just said right there, because like as a kid growing up, I would have other people in my class, like my peers, and they wouldn't try as hard, or they'd be sleeping in class. And in that moment when I was their age with them, and I was like, what are you doing here? Like, if you're just going to be sleeping, like, why would you even come to school? And I remember not being pissed, but I was like what are you doing? You're just wasting your time. Yeah. And then now as a teacher, and I work with kids who are emotionally disturbed, they're categorized as. Sure. And I have times where I talk to the kids. I'm like, oh, hey, good morning, guys. Like, how are you guys feeling today? Yeah. Like, how many hours of sleep did you get? And there's kids, they'll be brutally honest. Like, I got 2 hours of sleep last night. Like, my parents were up arguing all night. And
what do you say to that?
And I'm just like, oh. And I'm like, do you want to like take a nap? And they're like, honestly, yeah. Like, I'm tired. Yeah. And they'll be super just straightforward and honest. And I was like, okay. And they, sure enough, they got up and they went to the corner, had little bean bags there, and they just took a nap for like an hour.
And you know who's like their favorite person of the day? You, because you just let them sleep. Yeah. Like that was a crazy one when I started coaching soccer. Was Fort Bragg was great at this. Man, Fort Bragg soccer was so fun. Like, you guys know Isaac? What's his last name? Espinoza, maybe? Oh, he was classic though. He'd get in the soccer van every time. Mm-hmm. He'd put on this AM radio station that was basically mariachi music because it put them all to sleep. So it's like me and like 7 Hispanic kids. Yeah. They put the mariachi station on in 5 minutes. All of them would be asleep. But I remember being like, man, these kids like need to sleep.
Yeah.
And it was just a routine before every game. They'd like sleep a bunch. Mm-hmm. But like, I'm thinking, why? Like, not to say they shouldn't. I'm more like, what causes a kid to like get in a van with all his homies and either they're having a great time and laughing, but they would sleep a lot. Like, it tripped me out. Mm-hmm. But it's like, do the math. You know, they might not have a great place to sleep at home. Yeah. They might be getting up early, dude. You forget that like high school's like your kid goes to bed at 11 or 12 because he can't get sleep to start with and you're up at 6 or 7, you know, like that's not a lot of sleep. Like, totally. You know, if you're not a good sleeper and that starts adding, like, it's just weird to be like, wow, this is where these kids sleep.
And I think at that time, like we always talk about it, how high school, like, oh, it's a joke compared to college when you compare it to college. But in that moment, I mean, they don't know that, you know, they haven't experienced college yet. They haven't experienced another higher level. So for them, like the classes they're taking, it's tough. It's hard. Like
it is hard,
you know, and they're going to school almost all day. And then if they have sports, they don't get home till like 5 or 6.
It's funny you say that because I've like, of course I listened to a couple of your podcasts before and I heard this get brought up. And for me, it was almost the opposite. Because my high school years were so frantic and crazy, sort of, that when I got to college, I went to Humboldt. Yeah, my only school I got into.
How many schools did you apply to? How was that?
I did Humboldt, Sonoma, and Chico. I got into Sonoma actually because I think the lacrosse coach wanted me to play there.
Did you play lacrosse growing up?
Yeah, man.
Where you get
really?
Got the Golden Bowl 4 years in a row.
Really?
What?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I didn't get recruited. Lacrosse isn't really like it's like a college sport, but it's like, what do you do with it?
You know? Yeah, it's not really.
You know? And I was just getting the shit beat out of me.
Yeah.
Like I would get so beat up in those lacrosse games. Like I'd have like, you could see like emblems on because they'd hit you with the sticks. You know how it works? You could like see, like read stuff. Like one day I had one that said Warrior because that was the emblem of the like company. But like it was like that big. You could read the whole thing.
It was stamped on?
Yeah, like every game though, I'd end up with like some weird, you know, just so beat up. But yeah, man. I don't know how we got on that topic.
Oh, we were talking about how you got into Sonoma, but Humboldt.
Yeah, something I had to realize going to school was that when I got to Humboldt, it was just way easier. I mean, I was taking like general ed classes, but when I was in high school, my stepdad had a tree business. And so I did a lot of work with him, just like weekends, all my holidays. You know, all summer was like doing tree work with my stepdad, like running chainsaws and dragging brush and stuff. And then like going to Humboldt was like, wait, you're telling me I have like a whole weekend to do my homework? Like I did in Mendo too, but it was more like, you know, my house there's 5 kids and we lived in these 2 crazy little trailer things. And, you know, it was not built for going to school, you know? And so when I went to Humboldt, it was like, I think I had like a 3.5 my first 2 years. And then I sort of got worse, but I got better grades, you know? And it was because I actually had a place to go do this. You know, I got to like actually go to class every day. And, you know, and when I was playing soccer, I missed some classes, but like, you know, you play high school sports, you're missing classes, you know, and if you're not a good student like me, it adds up, you know, and then if you're doing like physical labor that's dangerous, like you're thinking about that, man. Like I was thinking way more about running chainsaws in high school than I was about math. Like, what are you going to cut your foot off when you go to work? Like,
I never even thought about that because I'm sure there's tons of kids who are working around here, especially with fishing or logging or any of that stuff. And maybe they're too focused on, oh man, today I got to go to work after this, or I got this to do.
100%.
Like, you know, instead of math or whatever else they're doing.
And I feel like now that I'm old enough to see that look, like you can see the look of a kid who's like traumatized from physical stuff, that some of it is that. Like I've seen a couple kids who are working in the fishing industry, like even just a couple jobs, like they worked a little bit over the summer. I could see they had like a little shell shock almost look to them of like life's dangerous. And they're like sophomores in high school or seniors in high school, but it's like, no, life is dangerous. You know what I mean? But if you're thinking that, you're not thinking about science.
Yeah.
Like, come on. Like I always want people to remember that is like, if you have these huge distractions over here that are especially like physically challenging or dangerous, you don't care about school. Like I've seen it in endless kids where it's like, they actually have a shell shocked look to them. And when you're like, do your math, they're like, no, Like, why would I do math right now, dude? Like, I'm trying to figure out how to deal with like an abusive father, or how to like not hurt myself at work. Like, those things overshadow school. And they did for me for a long time. Not like I had a bad family. Like, I didn't have like abusive parents, but like,
for sure,
I just had a, you know, crazy little hippie childhood, and it wasn't built for school, you know? Yeah.
I think talking to people more, I've gotten way more humble.
Sure.
Like, I listen to people's stories and I'm just like,
yeah,
I had such a normal life.
Or easy compared to how other people have it. You know?
Yeah.
Super easy. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, I can't imagine going home and only a single parent household, or having something like there's drugs being sold or like distributed in the house or whatever. I'm just like,
just distractions.
Yeah, just more distraction, more things to think about. It's like one more thing to have to worry about that day when you go home. Oh, it's blah, blah, blah going to be happening. Like, I could go home and I knew there was going to be food on my table.
Sure.
I knew I had my own room, or I had a place to do my work. It's just like, holy crap. Like, it really has been super humbling. And that's why I think I really enjoy this process of going and talking to different people and having this podcast, because it just makes me realize like not everybody had the same experience that I did.
You know, when we started this, it made me think of this one class I took in college. It was totally random why we did this, but I liked it. The whole class was pretty much, you had like 2 weeks or 3 weeks to like write your own life story, like, and then you went and presented it. And in every day you listen to like 2 or 3. So it'd be like 2 or 3 this week, 2 or 3 the next week, 2 or 3 until we got through the whole class. And it was really crazy though, to like see how people internalize their life stories. Then how did I internalize my own, like tell them, you know, because I had all these hiccups in my life where I was like, this happened. And then I had kids in class be like, did that really happen to you? And I'd be like, yeah, I guess so. Like, not like it's good or bad. It was just like, like, I didn't think about half the shit that happened to them. I was like, wow, that really happened to you? You know, and we forget that like our childhoods are nuts, like good or bad. It's just like, you know, that's part of your life. You don't control it. You don't control your life when you're 10. Yeah. You know, and you know, it's just a great lesson to learn what's going on.
Totally. And going back to college, is that something you always wanted to do? Did you always want to go to Humboldt or want to go to college or higher education? And
you know, my parents didn't graduate college. They sort of like halfway went. So, and my brother didn't go at all. And then, so there's a weird push for me to go to college. Just because I thought like my mom really wanted me to have a normal job and have a normal life, I guess you'd say. Yeah. Which is not what happened exactly. But there was a decent push for that. But I like barely got the grades. It was like, and I was a horrible student, you know. I even was in college. I wasn't like a great student. But, you know, again, like if you have time to do something, it's totally different concept. You know, like if I had time and energy to go back to college now, I'd probably get 4.0 and love it because my mind's in it. And you know what I mean? Like even when I was in college, I did a year and a half, totally went nuts with it. It was just like, dude, school's not for me. And my parents had got given a little bit of money. So we all went to Argentina for like a month or 2 months.
What? How was that?
It was cool.
What'd you do over there?
They just like, my parents aren't always the best with money, but this has like made my life fun, you know, where it's like, you know what I'm saying? Okay. They like inherited a little bit of money because like one of the grandmas passed away. So they took the family to San Rafael, just south of Mendoza, and we just kicked it.
On the beach or what?
No, it was like in the middle of the desert. Dude. It was like 100 degrees every day. And I'd go play soccer at night. And we just rented like a place like this size. Like it was tiny.
What?
For like a month and a half. And we took a little bit of Spanish lessons. But again, it all goes back to my mom going to Guadalajara. Yeah. Because she always had this thing of like, you guys are going to see Latin America. You're going to like see other cultures.
Dude, that's so awesome.
And she really pushed Spanish. But either way, so I went there. Then I came home and I did tree work for fucking 6 months. Like talk about dragging dead trees around in Alp and Boonville in the hot weather. Like screw that. You are going back to college.
Tell me about it.
So then I went back to college again for another year and a half, like burnt out again. Like one of my other things I preach too, I'm like, take breaks. Like if you're not a good student, take breaks. Yeah. And then I studied abroad because I burnt out again.
Studied abroad?
In Puebla.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
And then I did another year and a half. So I really did 3 stints of a year and a half and they were all completely different. It was like 3 different college experiences and they're all like smashed together, but it was like one I took a semester off and did the Argentina work in the chainsaw world. Dude. And then the second time I went to Puebla.
You've been around.
So you're in college when you went to Argentina?
I just took a semester off. So technically no. But it was my sophomore year technically.
When you travel to places like that, and obviously culturally it's different than a place like Mendocino County, like what do you learn? What do you take away from it? Like,
you know, they're all different. That's the great part about it. Like everywhere is different. You know, God, it's like almost impossible because you could go anywhere. Like one of the ones that really got me was I went to New Orleans a couple years ago. So I like saved up a little bit of money. I went to New Orleans for 2 months, and it was like when I was
by yourself, or
yeah, it was when I was really in my writing kick too. So I just like didn't meet anybody. I just like sat in this little house and wrote, and go to the coffee shop and like over and over. It was pretty brutal, really.
Wow, so hipster of you.
Yeah, I guess before hipsters were big. But I know I got a lot done. But what really got me was I felt almost more foreign in New Orleans than I did in Mexico. Because here I have like all these Hispanic friends who teach me their language, and they're so friendly, and it's like it's an interaction I'm so used to. Mm-hmm. And there it was like we're dealing with like race issues and all these different like energies in the city. And I was like, wow, I'm in the South. Like I don't even know how to like interact here.
And you could feel that, or you could see that.
Yeah. Well, okay, compared to here though, like when you say like race issues, you feel the tension. What's different? Like give me
just little subtleties, you know, like. Man, it's even hard to say what they are. Like the biggest one for me wasn't even like there's just little things that would happen where you're like, oh, there's still racial tension here. Like at one point, well, the biggest one that got me was there was Algiers Point is there where they like sold slavery. It's like the whole slave selling thing. They'd bring them into New Orleans and then like spread them out throughout the South. And I didn't go there, but I guess like right across the river, there's like a point that you can see, and it's now more of a community, but they like still have like the slave auction scene there. Like, I don't know if they got rid of the place itself, but you can feel it. You're like, oh, like something happened over there, dude. Like, I don't know about that.
Damn.
Like the area, like they didn't change anything or tear it down or anything. Like they still have it up.
I think they tore parts of it down, but it still has the same name, and it's still referred to with this weird, like, you know, it's hard to quantify like energies, you know, but like it was there. Like, I don't know. And like even in San Francisco, like I've been around, you know, different race things in San Francisco, or working at the school where I was not the only white teacher, but like a white teacher with a bunch of minority kids. Mm-hmm. It was addressed different, you know, like there, like here we're almost in a different little bubble where it's almost like, oh, California, you know, like that history is not our history, even though it is, you know, it's not like present every day. Like in New Orleans, there's a point over there that like is named after where they sold slaves, and it's not that far away. Yeah. You know, and it's like, you can't get around it. Like there's a high school there, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And here, like, you know, even though there's like racial tension and stuff, it's not like there isn't a Confederate flag flying right above us right now. Like, right. You know, that shit adds up. Like even now that I'm watching the stuff about bringing statues down and stuff, like.
Yeah. How do you feel about that?
I'm all for it, man. Like I was in New Orleans, and those statues are ominous. Like, I mean, there's only one that I would go by. But it's like this huge dude like looking at you, and you're like, oh, who runs this town? I'm like that guy or his relatives, or, right. You know, it doesn't take much before you have this like ominous vibe over you. I mean, I don't think taking statues down is all the answer. Right. But I mean, I don't know. You guys tell me. Like,
it's tough. I mean, I know they were trying to change the name in Fort Bragg, but I didn't get passed or whatever. But
yeah, I mean, in Sitka, where I just was, I heard about the Fort Bragg one, and then they're like, oh, they're talking about changing the name of Sitka, which is it's an old native village, really. And Sitka, I think, was how the Russians said it. And the real name is like I would totally butcher it to the point where I'm not going to say it. But they're like, no, we want our original name back. And I was like, fair enough. Like this was a native village for like 2,000 years. And now in the past 100, we took it. Yeah. Like what should, you know, you go with the old 2,000-year-old name or the 100-year-old name? Right. Like
makes sense.
Yeah. But I mean, I think the one that I'm realizing is I'm on a big trip where I'm listening to all the podcasts and just like trying to stay in tune and talk to my homies about what the racial issues are in our country. And the one I'm really realizing is that like, there's so many issues that are hard to address when it's not like every day in your face, which it isn't for me. Like, look, I'm living in like a beautiful little town with nothing going on. Yeah. You know, and what I'm realizing though is a lot of these larger social issues it's just stuff that I need to learn. You know,
that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Like I've always had a really close knit family, right? And my mom's really pushed that. But I'm listening to some like rap song yesterday. I don't even know who it was. And he has this thing where he like stops the song and he's like, oh, I'm here to bring up that like the core to real lesson learning and teaching people community is family. So if you don't go back and teach your kids through their most closest relationships, what is quality and what is whatever, like I forget how he said it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, damn, like here I am, not part of the anything. Like I'm just sitting in my own little world here. And I'm like, I need to learn from this. Like he's bringing up lessons that are so, I don't want to say they're unique to a person who is being challenged or like in a moment where they have a time to change, but they are like, you know, if you're sitting here pretty and you don't need to change shit, you're not even thinking that clearly. Like, you know, you're sort of in la la land.
Mm-hmm.
And because right after I heard this rap song, I see my mom. Because I went running with my mom, like me and my family has a pretty good workout routine still.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, I just heard this rap song about how family's got to be tight. And my mom's like, hell yeah. So I'm like, that's great. Yeah. And, but it's all right. Like, you know, that's why my family is tight, is my mom grilled us on that stuff. And, you know, I've learned so much through my family that it's like, you know, how do you get around that when it's like, oh no, that like if you're having social issues, I would also say family's probably a huge deal. You know what I mean? Like I need the reminder, but also if you want me to give you my best examples where I learn, it's my family. You know, my brothers, my sisters, like I got 2 brothers and 2 sisters and we're all tight enough that like I learn a lot from them. You know, and if we didn't all live in the same town and take care of each other, like it's a different conversation. You know, and I'm just, for me though, I'm going through a funny moment though of like, how do I ingrain what is being learned in general? Like you guys are learning something doing this. And it's part of the reason why I wanted to do it. I'm like, what are you guys learning? Like,
for sure.
You know, it's not like we all have the keys to everything. Like I certainly don't have the keys to a lot of things. Like I'm like, ooh, like what's going on here? You know, and I don't know. It's just, it's stuff that you can't always speak on personally, but you always have to listen.
Absolutely. Well, I think what I can, like you just mentioned, what are we learning? Like something like this, just talking to somebody like you.
Oh man. Yeah.
Like that just kind of reminds me of why am I taking, like what I like about you, what I've always admired about you. Like I'd be like showing up to men's league games. I'm like, where's Lloyd at? Like you were our best player. And they're like, oh, he went to like Columbia. He's over there teaching for a month. I'm like, what? Like this guy just like got up and left.
Yeah.
But there's something so cool about that. Not taking like everything so serious.
Yeah.
And I feel like nowadays, I'll speak for myself. Like I'm caught up in a loop to where it's like I need to go to school, I need to get a job, I need to do this. Like, but why? Well, like, why do I need to do that? You know, like
I mean, my personal opinion on this, that is like, you guys can take this as far as you want or not, is it's all a big like illusion of what we consider to be security. Like, what if I told you right now, you're gonna have everything you ever want, it's all gonna fall to you? Would you make different decisions? You know, if you never have to worry about a house, you never have to worry about money.
Damn.
Like, but I'm coming out of that from the sense of like, what is security? You know, so if we all have security, we start acting different and thinking different and doing all these things differently. And, you know, I have that. Like, even in the Mexican League, you say I got to come and go. Part of the reason I have that is I played on the team for 7 years when you showed up. Like, they all knew me as like, you know, a main part of the team. And I had security that I could always come back and learn Spanish from those guys and enjoy this interaction again. And it sounds simple, but I also had that with my work scene and with my family and with this tiny little town and working at the schools here. And it's like, once those things start lining up, you know, your decisions become your decisions, which is really rare. Like, I don't want people to like undervalue what that even means. You know, like a lot of them have it. Like my brother, who has his life totally figured out, he doesn't make decisions like me. He's got kids and a wife who he takes care of. And, you know, we have these little windows in our life though, where you can actually be like, oh, I'm running this. You know, it's not, you know, you need the infrastructure around you though, especially family. That's why it's so obvious that it helps.
Totally.
Yeah. I mean, do you have anything else? I know we talked off camera, like you wanted to bring other stuff up. Do you have anything else that you want to bring up? We basically,
I think we hit all the points.
Yeah, we hit all the points we want to talk to.
Yeah.
No, I mean, not really. It's all just fun chatting.
It is.
Yeah.
You know, the only ones I wanted to bring up, there was just like life story stuff, was I really want the whole like, see, I almost want to do my own like talk show or like stand-up comedy skit one day about what it means to be a hippie. Because I think that this is total, like, it's been such a watered down subject or like theme that people don't really know, like everybody's like, oh, I'm a hippie, I bought a Prius. And it's like, well, no, dude. Like I had the high school kids ask me a couple of years ago, we're all in the van together and they're all, Coach, are you a hippie? And I was like, ooh, like, damn. Like, I don't know.
What does it mean to be a hippie
what is it
to you? Yeah.
I mean, a lot of it to me though is, if we're like going in the bigger sense of the conversation, is like, what are you affecting? You know, because so many people, like my parents grew up in decently affluent families in SoCal. They both moved up here to be like the hippie life. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, now more and more I see like a life where it's like they want to like be part of this like moving forward of our life and our culture and, you know, protect the world and all that stuff. And I'm just so disappointed in people when the actual structure of their life doesn't represent that. Mm. Like, I mean, for me, for example, was when this whole fires happened last year, even before the coronavirus thing, I went on a whole thing where I was like, oh, I need to have food in my community. Like, because to me, food is security. Like, if we're really talking security, like security is food and housing. Mm-hmm. And even now, like I did a big thing where I planted, you know, I actually bought like a couple 100 pounds of potatoes and just started planting them at my friends' houses who wanted food, you know? And so for me, that represented like, we all, like, let's talk, if we're talking security, we can have financial security, we can have emotional security, but there's also this whole other style of security that's more based off of just like knowing what you're involved with. Like, you know, let's say you're really good at fishing. You can actually just go fish and feed yourself. If you're good at farming, you can go farm and feed yourself. Like if you're a decent little carpenter, you don't have to be good, but decent enough, you can build a little shack. Mm-hmm. And then it gets rid of all these other, like societal structures that we put so much weight on. Mm-hmm. Like I know my mom ran into this with my dad a lot, I'm sure. Cause something got brought up about my childhood. Cause I saw my mom on this run and I was like, oh, my friends Izzy and Gabe want to do this podcast. She's like, oh, you got to tell them about our trailers. And I was like, what? And, so again, like my dad was a really functional guy though. And I think it really helped him to like dive into that sort of hippie type of life because he could do so much. Mm-hmm. And he was really physically talented. And, you know, he was like high up in the sports world and really like huge, big buff guy in a lot of ways. But he wanted to like come live the hippie life. And his mom actually bought a place. They had a restaurant, it burnt down. And then they bought the Navarro Grange up Navarro Ridge. So him and his buddies like rebuilt that when they were in their 20s. But they didn't get anything. They were like living in trailers or living in tents and stuff. Like it wasn't like a glamour life at all. Mm-hmm. And then, but what I ended up realizing through all that was that, you know, we're all striving to get so much that like, can't you just make it? You know what I mean? Like so much of our world, like for me with the potato one was like, if we're all going to be worried about food and building like this life that's so structured, like, can't we just do it right here? You know what I mean? Like, I'll go to your guys' house and plant potatoes. And then that means that you guys, literally the potatoes aren't getting shipped. Like this is the bigger hippie one where I was trying to tell the kids, I was like, it's such a way of living that you have to realize that it means you're not buying into these things. Like, I think we have a huge issue in our culture right now. Like this is my big theme on what one of our cultural problems is that if we're all constantly buying into something that is enabling a guy to control us, then why are we buying into it? It's like, where does your dollar go type of thing. So let's say we're all buying into driving. You know, we're all trying to be anti-Dick Cheney. We're all trying to be anti-big government, anti these things. But if we're driving a new car all the time and we're, you know, buying into these infrastructures that they own, which to me, the biggest ones are like food and transportation, then we're just instantly complaining about them, then giving them what they want. You know what I mean? So you can't sit there and be like, hey, down with the man, like, you know, some crazy hippie comment, and then buy a new car.
Right.
You know,
or a new iPhone
or clothes. You know, I just ran into something about clothes, about how like all of our, like the dyes in our clothes are like totally messing up Southeast Asia. And like, go figure, like this is not a natural color, you know? And where does that dye go? Like, have you ever seen dye work? You know, I went and helped a friend with a rug project recently and the dye is gnarly, dude.
Really?
Yeah. I have a friend in Elk who, she has a weaving studio, the Carlton Designs. They do like these huge rugs that are really expensive and nice. And I was like, hey, you mind if I make one? Cause she was my neighbor growing up and she let me. But just seeing the whole process was like, and she's doing it in such a sustainable, functional way. But I'm like looking at the big picture, like, wow, so every time we dye something, we're just dumping the gnarliest chemicals you've ever seen. Like, oh, thanks for the white t-shirt. You know what I mean? And I think part of me, where I feel some guilt, like being this hippie kid from Elk, is like, our life was so straightforward. Like if I really went there, our life as a child was so straightforward that I didn't have the guilt that a lot of, I think, most Americans have, because I didn't involve in that stuff. Like we cooked our food on a wood stove until I was like 13 or 14. You know, we had an outhouse until I was 19. You know, even after that. So like when everybody else is like buying into the infrastructure stuff, it's like, no, like I literally dug outhouse holes until I was almost 20. Like I've had an outhouse for more than half my life. But when you look at the big picture, it's like, well, what are we buying into when even just like buying a new septic tank? Like cement's gnarly. Like that shit is not good for our environment. And now there's this huge block of cement underground. And it like when you really start picking all these things apart, you start looking at like, oh, whoa, like I affected a lot, you know, just on a daily basis. Like where's the coffee come from? You know, and I don't want to like have to pick everybody apart, but I had some really nice visits with my mom recently. And this stuff started getting brought up more and more of like, what am I affecting? Like on the basics, like we fly to Hawaii. Like, what's that really mean? You know, you like take a crazy plane flight there. Then once you're there, you're literally eating Hawaiian people's food. Like technically no, but technically, yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, and if we go that far with it, then it's like, who's actually feeding themselves at all? Like, do you guys, not to call you guys out, but you ever like feed yourself? Like you catch a fish and eat it, you fucking make a potato. And, you know, I don't either that much, but you see what I'm saying? Like, and I started looking at it more and more of like, how directly can we make these loops? You know, like me wanting to like share what I've learned as a person is like, how can we cut out all these little loops of like, don't go to Safeway. Like we can grow corn in your backyard in Fort Bragg. You know what I mean? Like the shit you can grow in Fort Bragg is a lot. And then if we do that, then this whole argument about like workers' rights and Safeway is like gone. Like I'm not saying Safeway is wrong or right. I'm just picking something.
Sure.
But like, you know, these larger sort of systemic issues are solved by us just working, you know, and I actually saw a really cool documentary. We'd end on this. I don't know how long we're going with this.
No, we did.
I was watching this really cool documentary about Dolores Huerta, the lady who was with Cesar Chavez and the whole farm workers thing.
I actually shook her hand. I took a picture with her.
Ah, dude.
Yeah.
Where at?
I was in Washington, D.C. for Obama's inauguration. And,
oh, you're
damn. Look at this guy.
And I went to like some VIP
She's my hero,
Democratic
dude.
thing. And I took a picture. Yeah.
You see this documentary then?
I didn't probably.
You gotta see it.
He's just messing with you.
I was going
Just
for the
some
clout.
other old Hispanic lady.
I was going for the clout. Yeah. I was like, who is this?
Crazy lady. What's up?
I was like, hey, what's up? I'll take a pic. Yeah. No, but it was super cool.
Dude, you should see this documentary.
Okay. What is it called?
Dolores.
Okay.
And it's awesome.
Dolores? Let me write that.
Yeah, it's about Dolores Huerta. And it sort of goes off. You know, another real cool part about the documentary was sort of like women's roles and all this and how much it's been squished and unacknowledged. And when you really think about it, you're like Cesar Chavez had a couple great lines where he's like, how do you address a whole community when there's no women talking? Or shit like that, where you're like, oh, duh. Like you have to have both sides of the conversation there, or else you just have like ogres talking to ogres.
Sure.
You know? But she had this great line where they were going to do some crazy march or something like that. And she's like talking to these guys in the field. Like clearly they're doing manual labor in the Central Valley. Like it's not easy. And she's like, how are you going to pull all this off? And she just goes, oh, we know the strengths of our own bodies. And the guy, like the reporter's like, huh? And she's like, yeah, I physically know what I'm capable of. And so like, if you want us to garden your whole damn state, we'll garden the whole damn state. And the guy, like, of course, is some white reporter who's probably never gardened in his life. I'm serious. Like I was watching the thing and he's like, oh, huh? But like, from my perspective, I'm starting to see it like that. Like, let's say we need food. I mean, again, the biggest one that got me was the fires. When the fire trucks, or 2 years ago when the fires happened, they turned the power off.
Yeah.
There was no food here in like 2 days. I don't know if you guys noticed that.
I didn't know that. I wasn't living here at the time.
Everybody's fridges were turned off and stuff because there was no power either, and people were starting to
and
freak
there's no
out.
food.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Like
they become so like reliant on, is that the right word?
Yeah.
They rely so much on like going to Safeway or Harvest every day that they don't grow their own tomatoes. They don't grow their own potatoes.
Like, what happens if it goes out for a week? Are we all just going to be like, Safeway, we all starve to death because it's like, how pathetic does that sound? You know? And to me, though, that's this whole like potato kick I got on recently was like even now, catch this. My parents don't own property. So it's not like they're like living some big happy farm life. They have a fat garden scene, like pretty large in the back that they haven't quite been using. Really, because my mom, like, there's this shit where you're like, wow, like life's weird. My mom stopped gardening because she was doing so many massages, her wrists hurt, and she's 60. So it was like, oh, no brainer there, right? And then I was like, you know what, Mom, like, this is not legit. I'm going to help you put your garden back in this year because I'm afraid of those fires. This is before coronavirus. And I was like, look, if like those fires happen again next year, like the last thing, like I'm like a shameful son if my mom has no food, like bottom line, right? And I was like, I could just solve that right now, like no brainer. And so I ordered a bunch of potatoes. And then my brother, who had a little tractor, came over just out of nowhere, like just being the other nice son, came and like tilled his own. And then literally this whole time, my mom, so I planted probably 100 pounds of seed potatoes, cost me $100, like $100, not much. My mom has been eating out of that garden like every day this whole time. They don't go to town.
Just potatoes?
No, but she says she does potatoes for breakfast every morning. So like I'm providing one of her 2 meals every day. And she could do more. She's not even like harvesting them that much. So like when everybody else is like, oh, how's my mom? Like I'm thinking like, damn, I just spent $100. I'm not even worried about my mom anymore. I just spent it in the right direction.
Right.
You know, I just, and I did it for other people. Like I'll do this with you guys right now. Like if you guys want to put fat gardens in at your mom's houses, like it just makes a difference in your whole energy of your family where it's like, oh, let's go over to dinner. Where'd the zucchinis come from? Oh, right there. Where'd the lettuce come? Oh, right there. Like, oh, there's a fire over there and the stores are shut down. Like, who cares? Like, again, like when I was a child, people think that there was like a downside to being this hippie kid and you didn't have stuff. We always had like fresh food and vegetables. Like my dad fished out of the ocean like all the time, like endless, to the point where it was like, no, we're eating better than everybody with money, you know,
and healthier.
Just a different lifestyle. Yeah, and it's frowned upon in this way of like you don't have your shit together, but really it's like no, there's like multiple versions of security, you know, and I'm strangely just disappointed in our culture that we don't see the other one, where it's like, you know, even with you guys, like we're all homies. My brother has extra slash piles that we can like get boards out and build garden beds, and literally it will take the three of us like 3 hours maybe to like make a nice garden scene at either one of your mom's houses.
Do you have any? Like,
my dad's actually super huge in gardening. We have a whole little back area, and he's got a bunch of different like apple trees, nectarine trees. Sure. He's got lettuce going, he got tomatoes going. Sure. We have like raspberries. We have a bunch of stuff going on. Nice. And we use it a lot as much as we can. Nice. Yeah. And then our neighbors are super cool because whenever they come, they're huge into fishing too. They're huge fishermen. And so every time they come and they get catch, they always give us some of it. And so we always have like some fresh meals. It's really nice.
And I'm just trying to spread the word of the strength of that is like, you know, you get to go home and have this feeling of like, I'm going to go be fed by a nice like fish meal and some veggies out of my dad's garden. Yeah. Like a lot of people, like good chunk of our country is like, I'm going to go home to mom's house and like, hopefully she went to Costco or like, hopefully she went shopping recently. And like, if you're gardening, you don't think that because it's right there. Like the car doesn't need gas in it. You don't need to have anything figured out. It's like in your backyard. And you know, especially with the pandemic thing going on, I'm like, guys, if you don't have this basic style of security, you know, you're sort of like stuck in this worry mode. And I think the big misnomer in our culture, though, like across the board, is that we can just do it. Like your dad does it, my mom does it, and like I look at my family differently because we can all go eat at my mom's house for free. You know, because my brother's house is similar, like amazing garden. Like you go to my brother's house and you're eating like corn right out, like pop here, put it on the vid, like, and you're like, oh, like you want me to bring anything? And they're like, no, bring nothing. Like bring some beers if you want. And they don't even go to the store. You know what I mean? Like, but I'm just only saying that because it makes for this sense of security that I think people are like fighting for when really you just go do it. You know, and I really struggle with trying to explain that to people. And sometimes I'm like, wow, is it my childhood that taught me that? Because we always had a garden and we never really had money and we ate out of the garden a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure that helped.
I think so. I think it's one of those things that people don't understand it. Like I don't understand it because I've never lived it.
Sure.
You know, like but I do see like my friends, like I have a buddy in Ukiah that has his own little ranch right there, like in a 1 acre property.
Sure.
Has his cow there, has his chickens, his pigs, his
everything.
Like we'd go to his house for carne asadas and you make salsa from the stuff right there in his garden.
Dude, Ukiah can grow everything. Well, like I don't want people to be confused that there isn't everything on the coast. Like between Ukiah, like over Highway 20, you can almost grow anything in the world. Like, cause it gets cold enough here, it gets hot enough there. It's like, how are we not like just bumping with cool stuff to eat here? And some people are, you know, I'm not saying it's not happening, but to me though, this is this big like elephant in the room. You know, even over here with I'm right next to the Beaujolais pizza place has like kale pizzas or whatever. They get the kale from their garden and it's like the one they have year round. Cause it's like, oh, it's like you're getting part of your ingredients right here, you know?
Super cool.
You don't need like a whole other, you know,
distributor, whatever.
Yeah. And, you know, and for me, this isn't just about like, let's be hippies and eat and be healthy. It's also like, if we're going to be complaining about, you know, the financial structures of our country, and we're going to be complaining about, you know, the big bosses who own everything. Like, you know, we all have our gripes about that stuff. It's pretty easy. You know, you can't buy into their system and then be like, oh, you got me.
Complain about it.
Yeah. And it's like, dude, you're not even trying to feed yourself. Like if you want to not complain about the big industries, like, you know, step aside them, you know, like go fishing on your own or fish off the rocks. Like it's right there, you know? And I don't know, I'm always just a preacher of that stuff because I think it's like, you know, we're such capable people and people get stuck in little lulls of like looking at Instagram. You know what I mean? Like you look at Instagram all day and it's like, dude, you could have just fucking planted a garden for your whole family and been chilling.
Yeah, that's very true.
You know?
No.
Yeah, I mean, no, I want to plant a garden. Why not? That's the thing. Like,
dude, I'll
you know what
come
I'm saying?
do it
Like,
with
if you
you.
have
Like,
the space.
I got tomorrow.
Yeah,
off.
like what is it? That's, I guess, just the time, just the energy. You know what I'm saying? Like what else would be like
that's it.
preventing me from doing it?
Dirt. Like, I don't know. You got a mini little space.
Yeah. I mean, the space is there.
I mean, I was cracking up because Franny and David are like two of my better friends from Fort Bragg. And I played soccer with them since I was 10. And I hit them up. I'm like, you guys want some potatoes? Both of them said yes. No hesitation.
Do they have gardens or did you start one with them?
I'll catch this. David has nothing. He's just in this little like back, you know, apartment thing he's renting. And he had like a little like box, like the size of a travel bag, like maybe 2-3 of them. But he was still gung-ho because he's just like from a Hispanic family that grew up farming. He's like, no, let's do it. We like planted peas and these little potatoes. And I haven't seen him since, but he's like, no, they went great. Like I got my potatoes out of there. And like, we literally planted them in like a box. It was like tiny and like worthless, but he still had like a couple meals, you know,
get something out of it.
Fresh peas, you know, bachelor dude. And Franny, who also said yes with no hesitation, he moved into a place right next to the middle school, the high school. I think it's the high school. He's next to the high school now, somewhere in there. But he got it because there was a bunch of fruit trees in the backyard. And then he'd never grown potatoes before. And I was like, dude, you just dig 6 inches down, put them in, water them.
How long does it take for them to, like, I know nothing about gardening. Like, how long does it take for them to?
Takes a couple of weeks for them to come out of the ground, like 2-3 weeks, depending on how sprouted they are. And then after that, it takes anywhere from 3 months total to like maybe a little more. But the big ticket with potatoes, again, is you can leave them in the ground. So like, let's say you get them all going and everything, you can literally just like take off for a couple of weeks and like not, you know, especially once they're full cycle. Because they're a little tuber underground and they're like basically the potato that we eat is their storage unit. You know what I'm saying? So like they go into hibernation and leave the potato for next year. So there'll be a plant next year. And then so we come pull up the potato. But that means that the potato can sit there for a couple months sometimes. Like you don't need to refrigerate it. You don't even need to dig it up. Like think how efficient that is.
So when you pull one out, do you have to plant again? Or how many potatoes do you get out of one seed?
Well, so the potato really is like you could go to the grocery store, buy a potato, let it sit on your counter, and it'll start sprouting.
Okay.
And that's all it is. Like I bought seed potatoes from a place in Colorado because they're really cheap. And they sent me potatoes that just had like little nubbies coming out of them, like looked like they were like old, you know, like from Safeway, but old. And And that's all it is. And they grow them there in the winter because it's like the cycles work better. But technically, let's say you plant your potato, it branches out, you get 7 or 8 potatoes underground. You only pull 5 of them. There's still 2 down there and it'll go again. You know what I mean? Like some potato, that's why people can't get rid of potatoes sometimes.
You can't find them.
What?
They can't find them.
Do you dig for them? Like you go looking for them?
Yeah.
Pop, pop.
Damn, I didn't know that.
That's crazy.
Dude, like I went over to a friend's house a little while ago. It was at my mom's house.
Mm-hmm.
My nephew's like just turned 5. And we had like Easter egg hunt. But for potatoes, I like gave them a little access. Dude, they had a great time. They're like, I got a big one. I'm like, yeah, put it in the bucket. Like we went on for like an hour.
Damn, that's lit.
And it was just like kid time, you know? It's like harvest potatoes. And we didn't even do that many. Like I was blown away. There's a bunch there.
That's funny.
I think it's such a good point. Just to be able to be sustainable and to kind of like take care of yourself. It's like one of those things where if you get lost in the woods, can you live?
Walk out?
Yeah, can you walk out? Like a lot of people nowadays, including myself, I probably couldn't.
I couldn't.
You know, like I know some fact and stuff, but like just those basic like survival instincts, like how to build a fire, how to know how to garden.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, and I think this is like back to our bigger cultural conversation. I think people are really caught up because they don't have access to these things, or they don't have, you know, like another big one. I mean, this is taking this conversation a little further, but I got asked by a friend, what was the big benefits for me when COVID happened? Like something must have happened in your life. And I was like, right away, I was like, honestly, like it was that I knew enough people who own land. Like I don't own land. My family doesn't own land, but I have people who do. They let me go plant potatoes, and it solved this like dilemma I had of like, how do I feed my community? Like, let's say we really had like a food shortage here, which we might, like if they can't pick the crops in the Central Valley or whatever that we all eat, what are we going to eat? And I was like, oh, I solved mine. You know, like, did you guys solve yours? Like, I'm not calling you guys out, but I'm more like, if we actually had an interaction where it was like, oh shit, like who has, you know, their main dilemmas. But what got me was that my answer to the guy was like, oh, we have enough land. Like it really was an eye opener of like how much land my friends owned. And I don't know about you guys, like it's just, it was a situation of like, wow, I'm also part of like, I'm not upper class, but like, because I'm connected to that much land, I must be like, you know, it's not my land, but it was still, I'm trying to feed like my people in general. So therefore, whose land does it matter whose land it is? Like potatoes are potatoes.
yeah,
for sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Damn, that's super cool.
Yeah.
Well, we'll end it on that note.
Yeah.
Dude, this was so much fun.
And put a garden in your mom's
house.
house.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll talk about it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I'm not even joking. Like that.
I'm not either.
That'd be so cool. Just like, well, we'll talk about it off camera. But this is fun, man. Do you mind if we link people up with your information, your name and stuff like that?
Yeah,
when this drops?
Where can people find you? Or
ask questions about gardening, ask questions.
I don't really have great links in that sense. I guess I'm on Facebook or something.
Yeah,
but,
Facebook works.
Follow him on Facebook.
You know, I have these articles I was writing for the AVA recently. Like maybe I'll post some links on your guys' thing with that.
Yeah.
If I get another article out.
That's fine.
I had a cool one I was writing sort of about our social scene right now.
Yeah. Is there like a profile where people can go and look at those? Like
you know what? I got to talk to the AVA a little more because it's sort of tricky. But if you go to the AVA, Anderson, it's AVA, theava.com, and you go to writers and you type in my name, Lloyd Sinclair, you'll see 2 of my articles and maybe I can get links to the other ones.
Okay.
But one's sort of about the potato project, another one's about the power going out. And really it's about the benefits of the power going out. Like I have another whole spiel about like, this is going to help us if we all have to like sit down and calm down with COVID and learn how to deal with this stuff.
Yeah,
sort of an article about that.
Nice.
But yeah, you can find those at theava.com if you type my name in, Lloyd Sinclair, in the writers scene.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, sweet. Thanks for agreeing to do this, man. Thank you for your time. Thank you for everything, dude. This was so much fun. This was one of the fun, like the more enjoyable ones.
Interesting.
Yeah. I'm just grateful you guys are doing it. You know, I hope you guys keep doing it because it's a way for our community to get to know each other better.
Hell yeah,
totally.
Yeah. So thank you guys.
Man. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys later.
Yep. Yeah.
Dude, that was smooth.